Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen thinks she's too good to get a job. Am I the jerk for telling my mom to get a job just like everyone else? I'm 34 female. My mom, who's 59, has not worked for the last 30 years. When we were little, Dad worked and she was a stay-at-home mom. She refused to work even when we were older. I remember my parents fighting about it. After the divorce, Mom remarried almost instantly and relied on her much older husband, who passed last year after leaving everything for his adult kids and almost nothing for her. After the passing of her second husband, Mom moved in with my brother and his wife. She was supposed to look after their kids while they work. This didn't work out, and now they're kicking her out, which is totally my mom's fault. I told her multiple times this would happen if she continued to act like she did. She was extremely mean to my sister-in-law, tried to run their household, acted like the queen, refused to watch the kids full-time, which was their original agreement. She only watched them like half-day twice a week, and when she did a horrible job ignoring them. Now she wants to move in with me. She's claiming she'd help with the kid. I have a 2-year-old. I told her no. I saw what happened to my brother and sister-in-law. You caused major issues in their marriage, and I will not risk that. After all, you always told us adult kids should never live with their parents. Yes, we were both kicked out at 18 right after we finished school. She started crying and saying that she doesn't have anywhere to go. She has until the end of the month to leave my brother's house. I told her neither did I when she kicked me out at 18 and I went to live on my friend's couch, but I worked and eventually rented a room, so I guess that's what she has to do. That's what everyone else does. She asked me to at least pay her rent until she gets back on her feet. I said no. You're a healthy, working-age person. You should not be freeloading. That's exactly what she told me when I was 18. We had a big fight about it, but I refused to let her move in or give her money. I'm sure she should still have some from her inheritance, and I know for a fact my brother gave her money, so I don't feel guilty at all. Now, multiple relatives are texting me, basically saying me and sister-in-law are horrible people. Mom's late husband's son called to scold me, telling me my mom is my responsibility and not theirs, so I should do what's right. I don't feel guilty, but perhaps that's what makes me the jerk. Am I? I do feel bad about people claiming I'm a bad daughter, mainly because my mother was never a model mom herself. She never put her kids first and was generally disinterested in us unless she needed something. I mean, if she were nice, I'd be happy to help her. When a relative calls going off on you for not housing your mother, your only response should be, "I'm so glad you called and that you're so concerned. I'll let mom know that you've offered her lodging. Please reach out to her directly to make arrangements." Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your mother should learn the consequences of her actions and her lack of actions. You had to learn that at 18. She finally has to learn now. Ask the meddling relatives if they spoke to your mother on your behalf when she kicked you out at 18. Am I the jerk for wanting to divorce my postpartum wife? It's stupid to think that I'm at this point now, but here I am. My soon-to-be ex-wife, who's 28, and I, 29 male, have wanted kids for years, and we were thrilled when she finally got pregnant last year. From day one, I wanted to be the most supportive husband and future father I could be. Her father was never involved in her life. I used to work as a tech in labor and delivery, and my brother, to put it kindly, is not the most involved father. I saw too many problems up close when it came to lacking husbands, and I would be darned before I made the same mistakes. The problem is, roughly 4 weeks into her pregnancy, everything started going downhill. She stopped wanting to hook up. Fair enough. Hormones and stress make that a problem, and I went full stop. But then she didn't want any physical interaction. No cuddling, no kissing, slowly becoming more and more distant. Her eating constantly changed, and she was terrible about it. She would demand I get her something all day. Then the moment I give it to her, she wants something else, screaming at me about it. Okay, again, hormonal issues. I get it, no problem. She never let me go to any appointments, no group she went to, spent more time away. Became cold and bitter, constantly angry at me, and this went on for months. Lost it on me when I forgot one of her dozens of tasks she assigned to me during the day. Stopped doing anything for the house a month into her pregnancy. Sure, she's pregnant. I get it, moving around is hard. But she wouldn't even do laundry about 4 weeks in, and by 5 weeks, I did everything. I'm also the primary source of income. I barely sleep, I'm running on fumes. Made me sleep in the guest room, would always try and pick fights. I never once raised my voice or my tone. I sat there and constantly mentally reminded myself this isn't her and this would all be worth it. She didn't want me to make any of the baby decisions. No names, no work on the nursery, nothing. 1 month before she delivered, she yelled how useless I am and how I don't do anything and that she's staying with her mother. She didn't let me get her anything, come check on her, threatened to divorce me and get a restraining order if I even called her. A couple of weeks back, I found out about the birth of my son from a Facebook post. She posted it with her mother and some family. It just broke me. I tried to go to the hospital and visit, and they had security kick me out. After months of this, I had had it. Odds are I'm not even on the birth certificate. I opened a new account and all my deposits go there. I took half out of our joint account. She never bought baby stuff ahead of time. Who knows what that money was going towards? So now that she has to buy supplies for our son, she's used up every cent. I've gotten a lawyer. The house is mine. I'm the only one who spent money on it anyway. I've sent the rest of her stuff to her mother's house. I'm demanding a paternity test. I'm not spending another dime until I get verification that this is my son. I'm absolutely divorcing her. She chose the stay-at-home life. If she cheated, she's done for. Her mother has money for a couple of weeks' stay, but not even close to enough for full-time support. If he is my son, I will absolutely be getting my rights as a father for a relationship. Last week, my soon-to-be ex called me. She was practically hyperventilating. She wanted to come home. She was crying how it was all a big mistake. She's not staying with her mother. She's at a friend's house now. She wants to come home. She wants our son to have his father. I told her I don't even believe he's my son. Why would she pull this crap if he is? Show me a paternity test and I'll do everything I can for him and only him. She wants to meet tomorrow at a park so I can talk to her. I said sure, so I can finally say everything I should have said months ago to her face. My parents are hoping we can make up, but they absolutely understand if I won't. My brother's a deadbeat jerk, so I don't care what he has to say, but my sister thinks I should at least hear her out. Not the jerk, but please meet her in a public place, preferably with security cameras. Do not meet her alone. Not the jerk. Do not meet her at the park tomorrow. If she wants to meet you, then it can be at your lawyer's office with your representative present and a conversation that's recorded. If your kid is yours after an immediate paternity test, make sure your name is on the certificate and that you file for equal custody and have an equal say in all decisions of his life. I would even ask to communicate via a parenting app. Save all forms of communication from her via text and email so that you have a paper trail. No phone calls. I'm so sorry you had to go through this and that your experience of becoming a father, if the kid is yours, was ruined. You realize your worth and you do not want to be with a partner like this. Please protect yourself. I hope you have cameras around your property, a Ring camera by your door, and that you claim she abandoned your space. Your parents need to be on your side and follow your lead. The relationship is not healthy anymore, and now that a kid is involved, you should be putting the kid first and not raising it in a potentially toxic environment. Am I the jerk for not appreciating the surprise getaway my husband planned? For the past month, my husband, 27 male, and I, 28 female, have been in a rut. We've been arguing about so many trivial things. Last week, he randomly asked me if I liked eating s'mores. I said I don't care for them and rarely do I ever crave them. He then asked me what I thought about cabins and camping. I told him I don't care for either, to be honest, and the only way I would go camping is if it was a glamping experience. He nodded and said noted. And for those of you like me who have never heard of glamping, it's a form of camping involving accommodations and facilities more luxurious than those associated with traditional camping. Today, he tells me to be ready and dressed by 4 p.m. because we have a date planned. I put on a cute outfit because all he told me was that we have a special date. Any other time he said that, the date usually involves us going out to a fancy restaurant. So I put on a skirt, some heels, and a top. He sees my outfit but doesn't say anything. The only thing I noticed that was odd was that he brought his backpack with him. I asked him why, and he said that he just wanted to put his hoodie somewhere in case it got cold later. We got into the car, and 20 minutes into the drive, I ask him how far the restaurant is that we're going to. He smiles and says, "About an hour." I pull out my phone and I start responding to some work emails to kill time. And then when we arrived to our destination, I honestly got so upset. It was a super tiny trailer in the middle of the West Virginia woods. There was a small picnic table outside and just woods. I asked him what we were doing there, and he turns to me and says, "Surprise! We're having a couples retreat. Do you like it?" I walk inside the trailer, and mind you, my husband knows I'm extremely claustrophobic. There's no room inside this trailer. I start panicking because A, I need physical space, and B, I'm in heels and a skirt in the middle of the woods. C, He packed pajamas, his toothbrush, and a change of clothes, but didn't think to tell me I'd be needing anything for this date. At this point, I just blatantly asked him, "Have I ever expressed any interest in camping to you?" He said no. And then I followed up with, "You know how much I hate small spaces. What made you think I'd enjoy this? I just really want to understand." He didn't say anything. I told him I appreciated the gesture, but I could not for the life of me figure out how he thought planning this in the way he did was going to help get us out of the rut. This isn't the first time he's planned something for me that I hated. And the worst thing, I've told him before, if I've never expressed interest in something, to please not gift it to me or plan a date around it. I do a very good job at giving him extremely thoughtful gifts and planning him very thoughtful dates and experiences. And today, I told him that it just seems like there isn't any consideration for me in that regard. Am I the jerk for reacting the way I did? Not the jerk. I'm bewildered by the idea of him planning a camping trip, not even hinting that you dressing up for going out to dinner was a problem, and not bringing along any toiletries or extra clothing for you. What was going on in this man's brain? I'm going to bring my wife out to the woods with inadequate clothing and with nothing for her to change into or sleep in, and she's going to be happy about it. I don't necessarily mind camping, but this entire experience would feel disrespectful and really tick me off. OP. I was very surprised to learn that he didn't pack me anything at all. If he packed me an overnight bag, I might have reacted differently. I mean, yeah, sure, I hate small spaces. Would I have enjoyed myself? Probably not. But it would have been nice to know that my partner packed my essentials, that he was thoughtful and intentional with the planning. Does he have an ounce of respect for you? You actively told him you would not enjoy this experience, and he said noted, and then took you anyway to the worst camping plan with no proper packing or toiletries. Are you kidding me? I would cry my eyes out and go wait in the car to go home. The complete lack of saying anything when he saw your outfit is what gets me too. OP. I'm such a type A person when it comes to planning anything that it's very difficult for me to empathize or come up with any adequate excuses for him to understand why such a lack of careful planning when it comes to surprising me. And the surprise was something I told him I would not enjoy. All I know is our therapist is going to have a field day with this. Am I the jerk for telling my wife I won't be as stressed out next year because I won't be married to her? I, 32 male, have been married to my wife, Jen, who's also 32, for a little over 7 years now. Up until about 2 years ago, things were great. However, a disastrous move, a few family emergencies, and a totaled car have left us in a terrible financial situation. All our savings are pretty much gone, 401k is empty, and we're hemorrhaging money. Before we bought our house 2 years ago, things were amazing financially. We made the mistake of buying a nice 3-bedroom house because we planned on having kids. Those plans, thankfully, got put on the back burner because adding a kid into this mess right now would destroy us. It's not really a mystery why things are like this. Jen and I are both underpaid at our jobs, and we moved into a high cost of living area like morons. Last December, I told Jen one of two things needed to happen. We either sell the house or start making more money. The latter would most definitely mean finding new jobs that would pay us a market rate. Jen pushed back on this because she loved the house and her current job. I told her she had to choose one and couldn't have it both ways, and after a week of arguing, she agreed we would look for new jobs. It's been almost 6 months now. Last Friday, I signed an offer for a new job. It's over a $35,000 raise for me. Jen, however, has done nothing. In January, she asked for a raise in the market rate and was very disrespectfully told by her manager that she was not worth that. She was shown the door to leave if she wasn't happy. Jen has taken this as her putting in the effort and done nothing else, telling me we should wait and see what happens with my job search. I'm not happy about this. When I came home Friday and told her that I got the job, she got upset because I clarified this does not mean she can stay at her job. We fought again, and I told her that this would mean we only stop hemorrhaging money on the house. We will be able to save only a little and would still not be close to refilling our 401ks. Kids, the whole reason we got this darn house, would be entirely off the table. We haven't talked much since then. Yesterday, her parents visited for dinner. Despite my best efforts to keep them out of it, Jen announced my new job to her parents by saying maybe I'll stop complaining about money once I start. I don't know why I said it, but I replied with, "Oh, don't worry, Jen. I won't have to worry about money a year from now because we'll be divorced by then." Things got quiet real quick after that, and I excused myself. Her parents left shortly after, and she slept on the couch to avoid talking to me. I haven't talked to Jen or her parents since last night. Things are very cold between us right now, and I genuinely wonder if I did something last night that probably ruined my marriage. Update. Yeah, I messed up. People are rightfully tearing into me for wondering if this marriage didn't end when those words came from my mouth. I went to Jen last night to talk, and she refused to even say a word to me. She ended up locking herself in our bedroom and finally told me to go away. I'm scheduling some consultations with divorce attorneys today. Some people are asking about car accidents and family emergencies, mostly blaming me for them. The car was neither of our faults. An uninsured driver hit my wife's fully paid-off car. Insurance gave us peanuts. The family emergencies were a handful of things that were just unluckily close to each other. I don't think you can really assign blame to these kinds of things. People will probably say I'm covering myself for something and still blame me. Whatever. The big mistake was the house, which I was 50% responsible for. Before I wrote this post, I probably should have admitted to myself that I spoke my feelings at dinner, and I got my wish. I don't know why you're so worried if you were wrong or not. You'll be divorced a year from now. I'm sorry. Did you say, I genuinely wonder if I did something last night that probably ruined my marriage? You told your wife you will be divorcing her within the year in front of her parents. If you can come back from that, it's going to be a long, hard road. You have a right to be angry about everything going on, even a right to divorce her. But if you wanted to repair this marriage at all, that wasn't the way to do it. Everyone sucks here. She started the battle by announcing at dinner to her parents your new job by saying, maybe now you'll stop complaining about money. She knew what she was doing. Then you really dropped the bomb and won the battle, but you also scorched the earth. But you probably will be divorced anyways because you guys are financially unfit and incompatible. She's never leaving that job. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. All I know is I wish I had become a divorce attorney instead of a YouTuber. Talk about a good career choice. Am I the jerk for separating my finances from my husband because he won't quit giving his parents money? My husband and I have been together for over 9 years, and separating our finances never occurred to me until this past year. I'm the saver and he's the spender. In the beginning, it didn't bother me because we had 2 incomes and we weren't rich, but we lived comfortably. His family has always borrowed money from us, but rarely ever paid that money back. I personally don't lend money, not even to family, but I don't stop him from lending to his. A few years ago, my husband was in a bad car wreck and can no longer work, so I became the sole breadwinner. He now gets disability, but that was a 4-year process. In that time, we dwindled our savings to nothing and came close to losing everything. Our debt mounted up, and there was nothing that I could do. When he received his back pay, I only asked him to pay off his vehicle, a loan in which I've paid over 50 grand on in the last few years, and put some in savings. But he did neither. Instead, he blew the money, loaning over $10,000 to his family and paying nothing towards the debt that we created. During this time, I was able to save some money from my paycheck, but not much, and had plans to pay some debts off once I had enough saved. He knew I was saving to do this. About a month ago, I noticed over $700 missing out of our savings, and I asked him what happened. He replied with, "I loaned it to my parents." I asked when he was going to receive it back because that money was already spent and I needed it. He said, "I don't know, when they can afford to." I blew up and lost it. He didn't ask me. We didn't speak about it. He did it behind my back because he knew it would upset me and that I would say no if he asked me. We had a huge fight. I figured after that fight he would stop, but no. Yesterday I checked my account and another $1,000 was gone. Gone where, you ask? He gave it to his parents. I'm so mad I see red. I flat out told him that as of today, I'm done with his parents. I'll pay half the household bills, buy our food, and that's it. If he wants to lend all his disability to them, fine. But I'm not gonna go bust my tail working 60 hours a week so he can keep giving away our money. So, am I the jerk for going to the bank and withdrawing all my money I put there and opening a new account that he doesn't have access to? He seems to think I am and says that I should want to make his parents happy. I would like to see them happy, I just don't want to pay for that happiness. Not the jerk. You should have done this way sooner if that's how he is with money. Not the jerk. But if he's at this point where he's comfortable stealing money, then he's comfortable racking up credit cards and tanking your life together. Check your local laws and see if marital debt is shared. My boyfriend doesn't understand that his house and his rules are creating resentment on my end. My boyfriend and I, late 30s, have been together for 8 years, and we've lived together for the last 7 of those. The house is in his name and 100% belongs to him. We both have full-time jobs. I make decent money, but he makes twice as much as I do. When I moved in, he asked that I give him $440 a month towards bills. Since then, I've taken it upon myself to also cover the cost of groceries and anything related to cooking. We take turns paying for dinner if we go out. He doesn't believe in marriage or the idea of combined incomes, which doesn't really bother me. I take care of all the cooking, dishes, vacuuming, sweeping, and he cleans the litter boxes. Our original agreement was that I pay $400 a month and we take turns cleaning the litter boxes, but I absolutely hate doing it and the dust causes me to have asthma attacks, so we agreed that I would pay him $10 a week to opt out of that chore. I technically can't afford to live on my own, but life wouldn't be as financially comfortable as it is currently. I feel like our setup is fair. He usually does too, until we get into any kind of argument. Anytime we have a heated disagreement, he brings up the fact that he pays for the majority of the bills and tells me that I don't contribute to housework. I will admit, I've always been a messy, unorganized person, and I have a tendency to leave random items in random places that don't make sense. So it's not uncommon for him to come home and find tweezers or a hoodie or a book or other random items just sitting in the kitchen counters. Most days I work from home, and I've managed to automate most of my job in a way that only requires me to really work for about 5 to 10 hours per week, and I do have plenty of free time. Our most recent argument is over his morning alarm. He has always kept it at a normal volume, but last week he changed it to a blaring siren noise that caused me to wake up in a state of panic. He says he needs it this loud or he'll oversleep, but I know that's not true because he never oversleeps. I'm a super light sleeper, and anytime his alarm wakes me up before him, I nudge him and tell him it's time to get up. I've never slept through an alarm, so even if he did, I'd be there to make sure he's up. He absolutely refuses to compromise with me on this and just says that it's his house and his rules. This is only the most recent example, but it applies to every single thing that I have feelings about. Regardless of what the issue is, he always gets the final say because it's his house and his rules. I'm starting to feel like he finds things that he knows bother me and then commits himself to doing those things to get under my skin. He says he doesn't. Another example is if I go to bed before him, he leaves the hall lights and kitchen lights on and then gets irritated when I turn them off because he needs to be able to see when he comes to bed. If we're sitting in bed watching TV and he goes to the kitchen to grab a few cookies, he has to turn the ceiling lights on just to eat them, even though our bedside lamps are on and completely light the room. He often waits until I'm in bed to do his laundry and then turns all the lights on while he puts his clothes away. Having a bunch of lights on for no reason really irritates me. I'm not sure why. One of our cats has bladder issues and we keep his expensive prescription dry food locked in the bathroom and let him in and out as needed. It's $130 per bag, so I try to keep the bathroom door shut to keep the other cats from helping themselves to an expensive snack. Almost every time he uses the bathroom, he forgets to close the door back afterwards and says he just forgot. We split the cost of this cat food. When I show signs of frustration over it, it's met with, "Get over it, it's my house." He'll come out of the bathroom and start to walk away, and I'll yell, "Hey, shut the door." Sometimes he does, but often he just walks away leaving it open and says, "You'll be okay," before walking off. He's actually gotten a lot better about most things in the last year or so, and I don't want to break up with him. We're happy for the most part, but I've been feeling miserable for the last couple of weeks. This new alarm thing has brought me to a whole new breaking point. Sometimes he's willing to talk about things that bother me, but usually he just tells me I need to learn to let things go and stop being dumb. Your boyfriend very clearly understands that his house and rules are creating resentment. His official stance is, "Get over it," when you say his actions directly affect your sleep and finances. So I'm not sure why breaking up is off the table, because it sounds like he literally doesn't care about you. And personally, that isn't a quality I look for or find attractive when dating someone. All of these things have very simple solutions too, and that makes him look even more unreasonable. He's doing all this crap to make you do the dirty work of ending the relationship. That's all. It's time to end this and live in a peaceful home where you don't have this obnoxious behavior to look forward to every day. He's deliberately doing things that he knows upset you and disturb your peace and make you feel unwelcome in your own home. We can only speculate about what his motives are, but nothing I can come up with says this guy is a good long-term partner prospect. Karen demands to use our hotel pool even though it's closed. Just for background info, I started working at this landmark hotel over the summer after being furloughed from a major hotel chain. It was my first time being a front desk agent, and I was so excited because this place is famous. I really wish I could identify this hotel because there's so much that needs to be said. I'm talking corrupt to the gills. I was really in awe when I started. I was getting tipped in champagne and 100s. Everyone I met at parties or just hanging out was pretty taken aback when I told them where I worked. But the magic started to wear off. I don't even know where to start. First and most importantly, the one and only hotel manager felt that she only needed to be present from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Let's call her Jen. Her supervising manager goes way back with the owner, friends from the old country, and doesn't believe in security or maintenance or anything that might be initially subtractive of profits, even if it's beneficial in the long run. Our hotel plus restaurant attracts the worst kinds of tourists. We're talking 500 restaurant covers on a weekend night. Some nice, but the majority are stuck-up people that are willing to pay premiums for mediocre food just to be seen at our property. Worst restaurant managers ever when I started. 2 of them, plus a few servers, were hauled out in cop cars after a few months of me being there, $20K each in fraud. Kitchen chefs go on crazy tirades targeting their staff. Constant complaints about the smell of mildew because Big Boss doesn't want to replace the AC. It doesn't even seem to work in some rooms. Numerous health code violations. The foulest, in my opinion, is that the custom duvets and throw pillows are not washed after each guest because Big Boss is too cheap to buy extras. Yet people still pay a starting price of $7.99 per night. There's so much more, but I want to focus on the story of me getting fired. Because I always worked PM, I suppose it was just my fate that I always got the worst customers. Anyway, my first impression of this guest didn't raise any red flags. Her check-in and payment was completed by AM. But it was my responsibility to give her the room key once her suite was ready. I was informed that she was in our restaurant enjoying lunch, so I thought I'd wait until she was done. But no, we'll call this restaurant manager Michael. He comes up and tells me the guest was upset about the restaurant in some way. He wants my help to recover. I say okay, I'll bring her room key to her now and throw in a comp bottle of Prosecco. She's super sweet to me. I didn't understand why Michael was sweating it. Fast forward to our dinner shift. Now I understand. We have a beautiful pool that serves as the centerpiece of our restaurant. Guests can't use said pool during dinner because, as mentioned, we're doing 500 covers. Guests know this. We tell them when they check in. Anyway, this guest was clearly mixing her alcohol with something because she really felt like it was appropriate for her and her friends to be in the pool in front of all of those people. Michael couldn't get her out. She basically lost it on him, so he came to me. I go down there and I put on my most polite tone and I inform her of the policy and I apologize for any confusion or miscommunication that may have occurred when she did her check-in. This jerk was not having it. Forget you. I paid for this room, which means I can stay in this pool if I want. That's why I booked this room closest to the pool, as I paid so much I can be here when I want. She breaks a champagne flute, knocks her phone to the ground and just refuses to budge. And I said okay and walked away. I didn't know what to do, and with no security or manager on site, I did what I felt was most appropriate. I called the police department and asked them to send an officer at their convenience. Not an emergency, just send someone. Well, this woman didn't want to listen to me, and she sure didn't want to listen to the cops. But miraculously, they're able to get her out of the pool when one of her friends realizes this isn't a game. It's time to get out. The cops ask if I want them evicted, and I said no, which is kind of regrettable on my part. I'm upgrading a much kinder, sober guest to a bigger suite as I witness them all drunk stubble around the hotel until eventually finding their own room. Once I'm back at my desk, I get a call from the drunk guest yelling at me, saying that I embarrassed her and demanding a refund. She's too drunk to understand what she's saying in my opinion, so I politely hang up. So she comes down to my desk. She's yelling about wanting to leave and demanding a refund because I embarrassed her. I say, I can't offer you a refund for my position, but when the manager comes in, you're welcome to speak with her. In the meantime, I'd be happy to have my bellman assist you with your bags. This goes on for a good hour. She keeps going up to her room and circling back to my desk shouting the same crap, but still never following through and leaving. Then, on her final trip to my desk, she wants me to walk her to her room because she's lost and locked out. She was scary calm with crazy eyes. My instincts said heck no. I can see all of the rooms from my desk. I point to hers, which had the door wide open, and I say, that's your room. I'm unable to help you at the moment. She just kept bugging me. But fortunately, I spot Michael, and as comeuppance for his hiding from the police and not taking any responsibility and really stepping in and helping me with the guest, I have him walk her to her room because I no longer felt safe. The anticlimactic ending. My boss Jen calls me the next day, my day off, to tell me that I'm being let go because I'm no longer a fit for the hotel. It's not working out. I knew it was because of last night, and I felt like absolute crap. My hands were tied. I would have been in trouble had they have been left to stay in the pool, and I'm clearly in trouble for not letting them stay, out of respect for our policy. Anyway, I'm really happy to say that the karmic universe has granted me a position at a true 5-star that takes measures to keep its workers safe, has 24/7 security, and there's always a manager on duty to help. It sucked being fired, but honestly, that crazy ride had to come to an end some kind of way. Speaking of hotels, what's your favorite hotel in the whole world? Please let us know. Econo Lodge for the win. Am I the jerk for bringing my fiancé to Christmas despite my famous cousin's wishes? My cousin is very famous. Yes, you have heard of him, and no, I won't tell you who he is. We'll call him Terry. When we have family functions, mainly for holidays, Terry likes for them to be only family so he can be himself and get drunk and pass out on the couch and share Hollywood gossip with us. Otherwise, he feels like he's being interviewed and having everyone talk to him or want a picture, and he has to be in promo mode. He said it's because he was tired of having to meet strangers and not being able to let loose, and there were some issues of these partners taking pics of him or spreading gossip. I hated this at first because I would be dating some chick and she would want to get to meet him, and it's awkward to tell them they can't come to family events and they get mad that they never get to meet him. My Tinder has a pic of me with Terry, but I get it, so I was fine with it. Until this year. I began dating this chick in August. I couldn't bring her to Thanksgiving, fine. But when I walk in, I see another cousin, Danielle, has brought her boyfriend, Steve, even though they've only been together for less than a year. They got together on New Year's and engaged on Halloween. Terry was fine with this because he's met Steve before, old family friend, even though I've been told that no exceptions are allowed to his rule. Thanksgiving sucked because the whole time I was mad that I once again wasn't allowed to bring my girlfriend. My girlfriend consoled me after, and I realized that she is my soulmate. 2 weeks ago I proposed and we got engaged. Xmas was at my aunt's. I'm a believer and ask for forgiveness, not permission, so I brought my fiancé because she had nowhere else to go and I wanted her to meet my family. We walk into the house and all heck breaks loose. Everyone was asking who she was and scolding me about the rules, and Terry flipped out. He was already buzzed and looked 20 pounds heavier than he usually presents himself and started yelling at me for doing this to him. He didn't seem excited at all about my engagement or willing to introduce himself to her. Our grandma was telling Terry to get over it and asking to see the ring and saying she wished she had gotten my fiancé a gift. So grandma was on my side, but Terry was still arguing with me and said I shouldn't be allowed at any more events, and he ended up calling an Uber Black and leaving before we even ate. To top it all off, my uncle, who has never even liked Terry, got upset because apparently Terry was his secret Santa, so he didn't get a gift. So my uncle started blaming me for ruining Christmas. I get that they are mad, but it was clear that there was an exception for fiancés, and I'm embarrassed that my family was so rude to her when I just didn't want her to be alone on Christmas. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I just want to know who their cousin is. Oh, this curiosity is too much for me. Force me to obtain my own work uniform with no notice after slashing my hours? Really? My final retail job was at a preppy designer clothing store. When I started working there, we were encouraged to wear the brand to work, although you could also wear plain khakis and a plain polo shirt. Then after a while, the general manager left. The new GM, a psychopath, announces that we all have to switch to uniforms, khaki or denim only, and a navy blue polo shirt or button-down only, which would be fine, but the company won't provide them, and the GM from Heck waited until 3 days before the deadline to tell us. And at the time, the store was very picked over from a big sale, so there was almost no acceptable stock and all the most common sizes in those styles were gone. About 60 employees, mostly part-timers, were frantically scrambling to find acceptable clothes with almost no notice, at our own expense, and nearly all of us had to look elsewhere. This was a particularly nightmarish prospect for me. I'd had my hours slashed repeatedly in retaliation for reporting a work injury. The GM was later demoted over it, and another manager was fired, but that's another story. I had no money. After rent and food, I had nothing left at the end of the month, and for the first time ever in my life, had to carry a balance on my credit card just to eat, and I can live on almost nothing. And by this point, that balance was maxed out due to car repairs. To make matters worse, my body is a nightmare to fit. Polos hang on me like tents, and button-ups always gap. Even if I could afford to buy the clothes I was now expected to wear, they weren't going to fit me to brand standards, and I would not have time to take them apart and reconstruct them. I went to the managers and explained that I couldn't afford any more clothes. They had cut my hours. The GM had deliberately interfered with my job search, like I was going to stay put with her around. My credit card was maxed out and I had no money left. Could I please get some help? Oh, it can be any brand, just no logo. Maybe you didn't hear me. I can't even afford to go to Goodwill. True. They blew me off again. So, you won't help me? Suit yourselves. I called my mom and asked if she still had any of the navy blue cotton fabric left over from a long ago sewing project. I was a fashion design major in art school. I knew how to make a shirt that fits me. I already had one pair of handmade jeans since R&R discontinued my preferred cut. The shirt met the required criteria of having a collar and buttons, and I deliberately did not do a great job, and I know how to do a great job. I didn't have time to make a collar mock-up and adjust the pattern. Oh well, the collar's just going to sit funny. I only had enough interfacing for the placket and the undercollar. Oh well, the collar already sits kinda funny anyway. I didn't have time to turn the collar points out exactly right. Oh well, they just won't quite match, and one of them is going to just stick out a bit. The first day the uniform rule was in effect, evil GM got one look at the shirt and her nasty smug smirk evaporated. She was fuming, but she couldn't do or say anything about it. After all, it fit the required criteria, and it was the best anyone could reasonably be expected to do with no notice, no money, and no help whatsoever. Sewing is a lot of work, you know. Yes, I got the heck out of there as soon as I could. Am I the jerk for leaving early after Santa didn't bring me or my future son anything like he did for the rest of the family? Okay, I'm 90% sure that I am, but I've let it sit for a day and I'm still hurt, so I need some outside perspective. Before we get into this, I'm very aware that many people in the world get nothing at all for Xmas. I actually spend weeks leading up to Xmas volunteering, virtually this year, for the women's shelter and a foster care organization. Prior to this Xmas, we quarantined for weeks and we all got tested. We are one of those families that doesn't go into stores, array curbside, or eat out, and we are all fortunate enough to work from home or be retired. Now, my mom does all the shopping for Xmas, full stop. She asked what I wanted, and because I'm pregnant, I just asked for stuff for the baby, especially since I won't have a baby shower. She said, fine, I'll get that stuff. But what about you and your husband? Well, we really didn't want for much, so I threw together 3 ideas for each of us, but told her to please shop for the baby. I also gave them a link to a registry with over 40 small items selected, so they weren't on their own. Meanwhile, I got them what they asked for. My dad a Fire Stick TV and contributed to his Oculus. My mom some jewelry from Pandora and hand-blown glass cups she wanted. My brother, 24, male, who still lives with them, a case for the iPad they got him and $100. My parents still do Santa, the whole bit, the cookies, the milk, the presents that magically show up. It's their choice. We don't ask for it, but we play along because it makes them happy. We come downstairs yesterday morning and everyone else has gifts from Santa. We do not. My dad just slips us a note saying Santa is done for us, so we sit there awkwardly while my mom, dad, and brother open all their gifts from Santa. They struggled to find gifts for me at all. They found plenty for my husband, gardening stuff he wanted, but the only real gift they gave me were a pair of Adidas shoes I didn't ask for, a perfume I don't wear, and a ramen I like. That's fine. All I wanted all along were things for the baby who they've known for weeks will be a boy. They gave us 3 onesies and an ugly nursing pillow. Icing on the cake was my older brother, 40, male, and his family have a whole stack of presents to be sent to them. Just for him. We're talking power tools, drill sets, brand name clothes, and shoes just for him, not to mention wife and kids. Here's what might make me a jerk. Not wanting to spoil everyone's fun by sulking, I chose to return 2 days earlier than planned. My husband is trying to be understanding, but said I may be the jerk for expecting anything at all and for leaving so unexpectedly. In fact, the entire family made passive-aggressive comments the entire day, but I ignored them all. The only person I felt bad for was my dad, because he seemed truly hurt. It feels as if it was just me and my future son who were neglected, so I left. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. All Santa got me was a lump of coal. The software does all that now. Okay, boss. Many moons ago, before the '08 recession, I, manager of the records department, among other things, worked in an industry where record keeping is super critical. Bad records means no more business because one of the many government agencies would shut you down, sometimes permanently. My direct boss, who reported to the CEO, was a good enough person but was overworked and would grab onto any ideas as long as it kicked the can down the road, at which point the problem was worse. He needed to go, but the CEO liked the results despite how negatively they impacted production and morale. In short, my boss had to go away and I needed to be the one reporting to the CEO. So I waited until he grabbed onto an idea so terrible that it had to be exploited. My boss came in and told me to stop the record keeping, all of it. He told me the salesperson for our software provider informed him that the software could do all of it. My boss was even kind enough to send me a direct email stating all of this. I called my team in and told them the news. We were all horrified and knew this would come back to bite us all. The software in question could do the job, but it was never set up or configured to meet the requirements. I had also spoken to legal and our government contacts a few months earlier about having software to do this, and we are required to inform them and submit samples of it prior to going live. None of that was ever done. So we just kept doing our job as normal, and strangely, no one asked any questions until the quarterly meetings. My boss apparently had not informed the CEO on his plan and instead decided to show the cost savings he had implemented at the quarterly meeting. Thankfully, our accountant was a sharp-eyed person and she immediately started questioning things. From the information I received from other folks who were in the meeting at that point, the accountant asked how it was possible, and my boss confidently told them he stopped the record-keeping requirements and the software was taking care of it all now. The IT people, who knew what was required to be compliant, apparently created a sound akin to a record needle scratch. IT stated we were months from implementation. Legal chimed in and pointed out that we were now in a seriously bad legal position. The CEO turned white before assuming a wondrous red tinge. Much shouting was then heard. Apparently, the salesperson told me it would work was not a good excuse. Suddenly, my phone rings and it is the CEO. I'm ordered to the conference room. I smile, grab my folder of evidence, inform my team I might not be back, and it's been fun, and I walk towards my fate. I walk into a scene I would like to have taken a picture of. The CEO, legal, and IT are up in arms. My boss looks defeated because he now understands how big the issue is. I grab a seat and listen to the lamenting of the masses. When it's my turn to talk, I calmly explain my side of things. The CEO loved the direct email from my boss telling me to stop record keeping. After letting that sink in, I calmly told them of my insubordination for the good of the company, the uninterrupted status of the record keeping, and how we were not in a pile of trouble, but in fact were 100% compliant. There was a collective sigh of relief. I then told them, moving forward, I would like to be out from under my boss's management and would prefer to report directly to the CEO. To my surprise, they agreed, and within the week, my boss was moved to places he could inflict less damage while having more eyes on his actions. Look at me. I'm the boss now. Am I the jerk for losing it on my brother-in-law at Christmas? My wife and her sister are very close, but dissimilar in major ways. My wife isn't materialistic, but my sister-in-law is one of the most materialistic people I've ever met and majorly suffers from the keeping up with the Jones syndrome. This type of keeping up with the Jones behavior really unsettles my wife and her mom, but they rarely call it out because my sister-in-law gets extremely defensive and acts like a victim. I recently got a promotion at work and I wanted to get my wife something special for Christmas. I got her a diamond necklace because I thought it was nice, and a lot of her grandmother's jewelry she inherited was stolen when our house was robbed a few years ago. I gave my wife her present at home before heading to her mom's house. My wife was happy, but concerned with how much I might have spent. Once at my mother-in-law's house, sister-in-law asked my wife what I got her for Christmas, and my wife casually replied, "A necklace." Sister-in-law fired off a barrage of questions. She asked me for all the details on it, but I couldn't remember. She took me aside and asked me how much I paid because she's very familiar with Tiffany's collection. I was uncomfortable with the question, but I answered because I didn't want to make it more weird. On our way home, my wife got a text from my sister-in-law saying they needed to have a real talk. She knows a lot about jewelry, didn't want to throw shade, but she could have gotten a much better deal on something better for the money. I was annoyed and angry, but brushed it off. When I was in the other room, my mother-in-law called my wife and started talking about how my sister-in-law could find a better deal for the price. And in the background, she could hear my sister-in-law revealing how much I paid and what she could have found for us instead. This really upset me. I told my wife that I was going to text her sister and ask her to stop. Normally, my wife would say no, but because we had had a few drinks, she didn't object to me texting, saying I appreciate her trying to find a better deal, but it's upsetting me, so please stop. Sister-in-law texted back, saying she had only asked me so she could place what piece you bought her, as I am very familiar with their collection. A few minutes later, I got a call from her husband asking me why I was going after his wife. I was annoyed and upset and told him to go forget himself and hung up. I felt badly, so I called him back to apologize, but asked him to stay out of it and leave it alone. He said it was his duty to defend his wife when someone goes after her, and I replied that she's an adult and I don't want to talk about it anymore, and we hung up. Sister-in-law and brother-in-law were planning to stay with us for a few days, but are going home instead. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is his sister-in-law? Please let us know. I wish you'd gotten me a necklace instead of that lump of coal. Please stop it with the coal. Umbridge wanted a fence. She got a fence. I worked at and volunteered for PTA in my daughter's elementary school for 7 years. During that time, we got a new principal. Let's call her Umbridge, as she was the master of hiding evil beneath a sugary sweet facade. Umbridge came in guns blazing as it was her first principal assignment. I am a take no BS kind of person, which irritated Umbridge to no end. Anyway, she got it into her head that our school needed a safety fence around it. See end of story to understand the quotation marks. It was going to cost loads of money that the district didn't have / wouldn't allocate. So Umbridge tasked me and our PTA with finding a way to fundraise and pay for her fence. Says she will find funds for the labor costs. Nobody wanted it. It wasn't needed, but okay. After nearly a year of researching viable alternatives, she vetoed everyone. One day, miraculously, I find that one of our students' parents owns a fencing company, and I call and fairly beg for any help or donation they can give. They say they'll donate the entire fence, only charge nominally for the labor. Umbridge is elated, but now that the fence is free, she wants the PTA to pay for the labor. I tell her she has very specifically drafted emails and speeches for the past year that she demanded be written into our meeting that the PTA must find a way to pay for the fence, not the labor. She is livid. Her fence was then installed. My favorite part isn't even the funding. She insists that the multiple gates, which the fence company actually would like to be paid for, aren't necessary. She installs one at the very entrance to the giant playground and grounds surrounded by this fence. And she has this super crazy strict, not to be broken rules that nobody will climb on or over this fence. As I worked playground duty often, I found immense pleasure in reporting to the principal every day that all of the school's basketballs, foursquare balls, volleyballs, or whatever had bounced over the fence, and as neither staff nor kids are allowed outside of the fence, on the fence, or over the fence, we would just be leaving them for her to deal with. I mean, she always made our very sweet custodians pick them up at the end of the day, but I made it my special job to report to her every incidence of anything going over the fence, since she's so very concerned about the fence situation, like 5 to 6 times a day, via walkie-talkie and email for documentation purposes. For those of you who are concerned about my lack of security, we had plenty of other barriers, had many other options available that the district would have paid for, and she even left the back of the fence next to the creek wide open and said, "The fence is just meant to be a visual barrier." Actually, the demise of Umbridge is pretty great, but maybe that's another post. Next time, specify your sandwich. Growing up, schools never mandated hot lunches. Honestly, I hate that some schools are doing that now. Our family's policy was we could each choose 2 days a week when the school was making something we really liked to order hot lunch. Other than that, we'd take our packed lunches. I made the packed lunches as I loved working with food to this day, and it gave my parents one less thing to worry about in the evening. Lunches were made the night before and kept in the fridge. The one annoying thing about this was my sister, elementary school, was a picky eater, and my brother, middle school, didn't like deciding what he wanted almost every day. So when I asked my siblings what they wanted in their lunch, they'd say they didn't know or give some vague response. Sometimes they'd then complain about what I did pack. Then I was handed an opportunity to teach them both a lesson. You see, my brother has a sarcastic sense of humor. 99% of the time, it's all in good fun and either leads to a laugh or something more funny down the road. On this particular occasion, when I asked what he wanted for lunch, he said, "Make me an air sandwich." So I took a sandwich bag and put 2 slices of bread, nothing but air between them. I then put a sticky note on the sandwich bag saying, "Enjoy your air sandwich." Now, to be fair, I wasn't going to let him go hungry over this. I put in a lot of fruit, a double helping of potato chips, and if I remember right, a little Debbie's dessert of some sort. It wasn't a hearty lunch, but he'd be fed. Plus, I later learned his friends pitched in with their own lunches when they saw what happened. I also didn't repeat this to my sister. I was tempted, but she had actually asked for chips and hummus that day. No point in punishing her when she had actually made an effort that day. Needless to say, when we got home, my brother went right up to me and shouted, "Really?" I started laughing. He complained about how he hadn't had much breakfast and was starving at lunchtime, only to find 2 pieces of bread and the note. He went on to say that he needed meat. Ironically, now he's a vegetarian. My mom was nearby and asked what happened. When she found out and I explained I had made sure he wouldn't starve, she sided with me. It was funny, overall harmless, and she had been trying to teach my siblings that lesson for ages. My brother's still slightly mad at me for that, but to be fair, from that day on, he always gave me a proper answer when I asked for lunch requests. He still has his sarcastic sense of humor too, and while I do sometimes use it to tease him, it's never anything truly malicious. End of the day, I love my brother, sense of humor and all. Oh, pro tip for anyone facing this. I've since learned you'll often get a better answer if you ask, "What cuisine do you want?" Do they want Italian, seafood, barbecue? From there, you can narrow down your options and figure out what to make. Speaking of sandwiches, what's your favorite sandwich of all time? Please let us know. I could really go for a BLT right now, smothered in mayonnaise. Yes! My sister thinks $55 covers 2 months of babysitting. This makes me hurt a little, because up to this point, my sister was the only one I could mildly get along with within my family. But I guess she is my mother's daughter, so the entitlement shouldn't have been a surprise. My sister and brother-in-law are both essential, cop and doctor, so they've needed someone to watch their kids now that school is canceled and a lot of daycare services aren't around. And even then, the youngest one had been kicked out of 2 of them, and finding a new one is difficult due to that. So I've been watching these kids 4 to 6 times a week, depending on their schedule, anywhere between 7 to 12 hours a day. I was told to wait until they got paid, then told to wait for the stimulus check to come in and they'd pay me for it. At that point, and I do have the text, it was going to be $85 a week. Regardless of that, 4 to 6 times a week. Well, they got the stimulus check in. My sister gives me $55 and tells me that this was for the babysitting. I told her, what the heck? This wasn't what we agreed on. I was told that I should be grateful because she has been feeding me. No, she hasn't. I bought my own food and tended to have to buy the food that these kids were eating for lunch. I was told that it was just like hanging out, having fun, playing video games with my nephews. No, it was not. And she knows her kids better to know they're monsters. They're both destructive. It's a hassle since I have to chase one of them around all the time to prevent them from climbing shelves or from getting out the front door because these kids were never taught to mind. And when I refused to bring my gaming laptop for the older one to play anymore, I told him specifically if he wanted to play on it, he had only touched the wireless mouse and keyboard and play it at the desk, but not to touch the laptop. So what does he do after getting bored with the one game he begged me to let him play? Picks up the laptop and runs with it and drops it. I screamed at him, not my best moment. And he had the attitude of a valley girl of, whatever, accidents happen. That's why they're accidents. If it breaks, you can just buy a new one. Of which I told him he would be the one to replace the $1,600 computer. But since that day, he's been a whining jerk about me not bringing it over for him to play with. I have to deal with these kids all the time and not being able to do a thing about it. They are monsters, and the only reason I agreed to do this was because she was my sister and she needed the help. But I was supposed to be compensated for my time away from my own work. I work commission-based jobs at home, but I can't work on it around them as there's no pause for me to do it. I know it'll probably be crappy of me to do if I just don't show up for the next few days until they fix paying me what they at the very least owe me. But on the other hand, I really just don't want to be around those kids anymore. Edit. They're 11 and 8. Entitled mom refuses to stop her kid from causing a scene during a movie, gets banned from the theater. I have a number of entitled parent stories from my time working in various customer service roles. Here's one of my earliest. I'll post some of the others at some point. Many years ago, I worked as an usher in a movie theater. We often got complaints about people and kids being noisy during movies, and as the usher, it was my job to make them stop or kick them out if they don't. During a relatively slow afternoon, a customer comes out of his theater to complain about a kid being disruptive in his rated R movie. There are only about 10 people in there, and immediately I spot the small kid, approximately 4 or 5, running up and down the stairs, back and forth in rows, making noises, bumping into people. It was unreal. The guy who complained points out the mother for me, so I go right up to her and tell her that she needs to keep her kid from running around and causing a disturbance, or I'll have to ask them to leave. She doesn't even look at or acknowledge me. Her kid continues to run rampant and she does nothing. I try again, talking louder and firmer. She finally looks at me and snaps. "I bought my ticket. I'm going to watch my movie. I don't have to do anything." I call in the manager. He tries the same thing. She begins shouting at him. "Back off, jerks. I'm not going to say anything to him. I don't have to. He can do whatever he wants, and I'm not going anywhere. I paid for my ticket." All the while, the movie is still playing and her kid is still running around like a little jerk. It escalated far beyond anything I'd seen up to that point. Given that a theater is private property and that she is no longer welcome due to her atrocious behavior, she is now trespassing and the police are called in. For liability purposes, employees were not allowed to grab customers and drag them out. Given the time of day, we didn't have officers on hand like we did in the evenings, so they had to drive there and didn't make it until right as the movie was ending. The manager and officers waited by the door of the theater, stopping the woman and her son, while another manager stood nearby and gave everyone else a free movie pass. The woman continued to make a scene and throw a fit, shouting, stomping her feet, flailing her arms, calling everyone names, and claiming that because she bought her ticket, she could do what she wanted, and we weren't allowed to do anything about it, and we weren't allowed to tell her to keep her son quiet. Her tantrum supposedly lasted for quite a while, including her swatting at the officers while they tried to calm her down. But I had to leave to tend to my other duties, so I didn't get to see the end of it. As I was told later on, she was forcibly removed by police when she refused to leave and kept throwing a tantrum, and was banned from the theater permanently. A copy of her ID was made and a picture taken, and they were put up at every ticket counter. Speaking of movie theaters, what was the last movie you saw in a theater? Do you even remember? If so, please tell us. It's been a long time, Mr. Reddit. A very long time. Don't touch the jukebox until all of entitled customers' songs have played? Fine by me. I'm a bartender at a little hole-in-the-wall watering hole with a very regular and very loyal customer base. I had last night off, so I met up with a friend at another bar for a few drinks and some food. After supper, we decide to walk to the bar I work at to cap off the evening. We get there, and there is a good energy going on. The music is a bit louder than usual, and there's maybe about 10 patrons in the bar. We have this one customer who is extremely wealthy, and it's nothing for him to spend $200 to $400 per night multiple times a week buying everyone's rounds. As such, he's treated like royalty around there. So I'm sitting there having a really good time, enjoying a beer, and decide that I want to add a song to the jukebox. I grab a $5 bill and walk over there, only to notice 63 credits showing on the screen. No big deal, I think. I'll just put my $5 in, request a few songs, and leave the 63 credits untouched. But no. Our wealthy regular, let's call him Jack, sees me perusing the jukebox and comes up and physically pushes me away from it. I ask him what the heck he thinks he's doing. He says those are his credits, and no one is allowed to touch the jukebox till he's used them up. I point out that I have my own $5 bill and no intention of using any of his credits. Nope, not good enough. No one is allowed to touch it until he's done with them. I know it's not worth arguing, so I step back and he starts requesting songs till he's used up every single credit. Each song costs 2 to 5 credits, so he put in a lot of songs. Each song gives you the option to pay an extra 2 credits to have your song played next, but I noticed he wasn't using it. This particular brand of jukebox has an accompanying phone app. I didn't have it downloaded prior to last night, but I do now. I calmly sat down at my table with my friend and put my plan in motion. I go to the App Store, find the app, download, install it, create an account, and purchase $10 worth of credits. I request 2 songs and pay the extra 2 credits to fast-track them. I sit there in quiet anticipation, and I can see that Jack is starting to get into a groove with the music he'd requested, Vietnam rock. His heart gloriously sinks when Bomb 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 by Sam and the Womp comes on. No big deal, guys. His song must be next. Nope, it's Wannabe by the Spice Girls. He sits down, dejected. I quickly purchase another $20 in credits and request Baby by Justin Bieber, Livin' La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin, Axel F by Crazy Frog, Foil by Weird Al Yankovic, and fast forward every one of them. Partway through Foil, I notice Jack sulking in his chair, so I purchase another $20 in credits and proceed to request Never Going to Give You Up by Rick Astley, Who Let the Dogs Out, Barking Mad Remix by Baha Men, Numa Numa by Ozone, and Star Wars Cantina March by John Williams. They're starting to realize something is up, so Jack and a few staff who were on last night convene at the jukebox to try and figure it out. At this point, the Cantina March is playing. They turn the jukebox off, then back on again. Doop 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 doop. They turn it off. They then turn it back on. Doo 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 doo. Each time picking up where it left off. I can't hold my laughter and let out a muted chuckle. One of my coworkers catches on and comes over with her phone in hand with the app open and shoves it in my face with a "How dare you! Yada yada yada." I quietly get up, down my last mouthful of beer, put my jacket on, and walk out without a word. I walk down the street to a greasy spoon that our staff and customers are regulars at due to proximity. I sit down, order a beer and a burger, and proceed to log back into the app. I purchase another $10 worth of credits and fast track All I Want for Christmas by Mariah Carey and Mickey by Tony Basil as one last Forget You to Jack. I can only imagine the fallout I'm going to face Monday afternoon when I show up to work, but whatever. My $40 was no less valid than his, and no one customer gets to commandeer the tunes for the entire night and physically block anyone else from touching it. Side note, yes, I did realize partway through my shenanigans that I could have just requested Tom Jones multiple times, but by then I was too deep in. If you were OP, what would you have played on the jukebox? Please let us know. I would have put on that TikTok song. TikTok round the clock, DJ blow my speakers up. Am I the jerk for being mad that my friend lied about what was in his egg roll? I don't eat meat and haven't for 5 or 6 years. It's not for religious reasons, but it's still something I feel extremely strongly about. I don't make exceptions for it ever, regardless of how drunk I get or how hungry I am, etc. At the same time, I do not judge anyone who does choose to eat meat around me, nor do I dictate what type of restaurant or bar my friends want to go to when we go out together. Vegetarian options are super widely available, so it's always a non-issue. That being said, I respect other people's choice for what they want to eat, and I expect the same in return. I was out drinking with my close friends, and one of them, we'll call him Ryan, offered me a leftover egg roll from his meal. I asked him if there was any meat in it, and he said no. I took a bite of it and again clarified with him, asking if he was sure. Ryan is well aware that I don't eat meat. Again, he told me no. Immediately after I finish eating the egg roll, Ryan gets this sick smirk on his face and tells me the egg roll had pork in it, like he thought it was funny. I asked him why the heck he would lie about something like that, knowing I'm a vegetarian, and he told me to chill out. We proceeded to get into a huge argument where he refused to apologize and kept insisting it wasn't a big deal. He was laughing about it and said I was overreacting about the whole thing. I told Ryan and our mutual friends that I don't want to be his friend anymore. I haven't spoken to him in over a month. Our mutual friends think I'm overreacting and that we should just move on, but Ryan still hasn't even really apologized and instead keeps downplaying what he did. I have never made my dietary choices anyone else's business. I'm not annoying about it. I don't judge my friends for what they choose to eat. At the bare minimum, I would appreciate it if they don't trick me into eating pork, knowing darn well I'm a vegetarian. I could easily move on if it was a simple mistake. Mistakes happen. It's just the fact that he did it seemingly so maliciously, and it really makes me have no interest in mending the friendship. I think what I'm so upset about is the blatant disrespect for what my clear boundaries are. Do you guys think I'm the jerk for staying so upset about this? Update. Wow, thank you all for your comments. Many of you have been able to word my frustration much better than I have been able to. Also, here's some clarification for questions I keep getting. Why are your friends not pressuring Ryan to apologize? They originally were. Ryan is just a stubborn, difficult dude in general and has been doubling down for the past month that he did nothing wrong. So I think they see the only way to the group getting past this is me forgiving Ryan rather than Ryan apologizing. We only have 1 semester of college left, and they want us to make up before we go back to school for spring semester. At this point, the only way that would happen is me moving on without an apology. I'm a pretty forgiving person, and before reading this thread, I really was doubting myself and thinking maybe I was being overdramatic over this. But you guys are right. What he did was messed up. Has Ryan apologized? This is what his justification, more or less, for the last month has been. He keeps coming back to the fact that I'm not vegetarian for religious reasons. He thinks that makes my food restrictions less valid. He also thinks that because I did not end up getting sick immediately afterward, which was a big part of our original argument in the restaurant, it makes the joke more harmless. We've been good friends for years and joke around with each other all the time. How is he supposed to know where the line is drawn? I'm more upset on principle, which is what he can't see. All he keeps coming back to is that I'm mad about an egg roll, which I feel like is a gross oversimplification of what actually happened. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is Ryan? Please let us know. Definitely Ryan. Should have given that egg roll to me. Egg rolls. What's your name? To provide some context, where I live, you're limited to parties of 4 in public places. You should only interact with people in your own party, and bars close at 8 p.m. However, my place of work is exploiting a legal loophole to remain open beyond those hours. Disclaimer, I don't agree with the exploitation, but I need to pay rent, making us one of a handful of bars in town that's open late. As such, we are under much closer scrutiny by the authorities, and my employers have given us a fair amount of liberty in ensuring customers follow the guidelines. The following happened last night during these hours. It's been a relatively slow evening, but enough to keep us on our toes. There's 1 or 2 trouble tables where me and my colleague keep finding ourselves needing to fix things. They're switching tables, intermingling with others, standing up, pulling chairs closer together, generally doing things that are a big no-no. I've now gone up to one of these tables for the 6th time trying to calmly explain why they can't be doing this and to please just follow the rules when one of the group interjects and tells me I'm being unreasonable. You're welcome to go to a different bar where you find the bartenders more reasonable, I say, to which he replies, I think I will, even after these lockdown regulations have ended. Now I'm tired. I've had the same discussion over and over for the past 9 months. I'm just trying to pay bills and not get sick. I'm tired of arguing with these people who think the rules are up for discussion. So I tell him, you know what? I'm gonna make this real easy for you. Get out.
Are you serious?
Completely.
What's your name?
I know exactly where this is going. Why do you need my name? Do you want to talk to my manager?
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Great. My boss, the owner, is sitting over there. I'll go grab him for you. Now, my boss has been in this business a long time. He doesn't take anyone's crap. He knows I do a good job and has my back. I'm actually looking forward to seeing this unfold. Go over to him, explain what's up, and show him the disgruntled customer. Customer tries to put up an argument, but this is clearly blown up in his face. My boss repeats what I already told him and tells him to get out and not come back. Doesn't even want him finishing his beer. Get your coat and get out. Customer is enraged. Clearly, we are power trippers that get our giggles in removing paying customers from our business. He claims,
You have no legal right to be doing this.
My boss tells him to look up the nearest police station and file a complaint. Sometimes I love this job. Am I the jerk for yelling at my mom over my own money? I'm 24, and I'm going to start this off by saying my mom is my bank manager. She always goes, checks, and even has nags at me because I used a cash machine that charged me for my own money when there is one 5 miles down the road from where I used it. I'm like, okay, mom, I was drinking and not going to walk 5 miles. This isn't the story. It's just to set it up so you know what I'm dealing with. Well, my savings account has quite a bit in it that was put there by myself, various members of my family for years of Christmases, birthdays, and such. My mom hates me spending any of that money. My fiancé and I are planning to move, and we had to put down a holding deposit and a fee to take it off the market. I think it was all in all around 170 pounds. I would also like to point out that due to current circumstances, we aren't working and are just getting money from furlough. I didn't have the 170 pounds in my account, but I thought, wait, my savings. I told my mom that I was going to dip into them, and she went crazy. She said that she would rather me not to touch it, but she would send me Christmas money, and that will be for the house too. Okay, sounds good to me. Thank you. Well, I ring her. She's at Costa's. She will go for a drink and then do it straight away when she gets home. I say, okay, thanks. Just that the letting agents close at 4 because of it being Christmas Eve. She doesn't trust Ping It or phone banking and likes to actually sign in and such on her laptop. I know, old school. She says okay. Time ticks by. It's now 2. I ring her again. She's now getting her last bits for Christmas Day. I say okay again, and she tells me she will do it in 20 minutes. The house place is calling me, and I said I would be able to pay it straight away. It's now 3:30. I say forget it and dip into my savings. We pay the holding fee and whatever, and I breathe a sigh of relief. Within minutes, I get a call from her, and she's yelling at me that I've dipped into my savings. By now, I'm annoyed, and I yell back and say that we have given her a few chances and she knew it needed to be paid by then. I say what she needs to do would have just taken 10 minutes. Just sign in, send money, and that would have been it. She calls me a money-grabbing spoiled child. I call her a dinosaur. I hang up. She's now still not talking to me. My fiancé thinks that I shouldn't have gone off at her and I should apologize to her. I kept ringing her on Christmas and she didn't pick up once. I'm now leaving it until she contacts me. My dad thinks I should reach out and says I can't be like this with her. I personally don't think I should. I have no problem going into my savings account. It's not like I was off getting beer or clothes with the money in it. Plus, she knew that there was a time that we needed to pay things. Also, she has been home multiple times before she would then leave and go out. Well, who do you agree with? OP or their mom? Please let us know. I dare you to try to control my money. There's always one Target employee that wears a blue polo instead of a red one each day. This was about 12 years or so ago, so I was about 20. I was on the phone with my then wife and walking through Target doing some Christmas shopping. I was wearing a dark blue polo shirt and charcoal slacks, relevant for later. As I'm walking through the media sections, CDs, books, magazines, and DVDs, 2 older women are seemingly trying to find something. They see me walking by, and as I walk past, I hear a, "Sir? Sir?" I kept walking because I figured it wasn't directed to me. I was on the phone and I was doing my own shopping. I found what I was looking for, so I looped back the other way to head to another section of the store. I worked at a restaurant at the time, and I also hate being in stores in general, so I walked pretty quickly. I hear behind me, "Excuse me, sir?" This kind of stopped me in my tracks, as it probably would most hearing someone suddenly shout in a public place. I turn, and she's looking dead at me and says, "Can I get some help over here?" I tell my wife to hold for a second, and I go over to see what she wants. She tells me she's looking for some sort of a lamp. So I tell her that the lamps are in the decor section, not in the DVD aisle. Weird, right? And then continue with my call with my wife and go shopping. I finally pass the lady one last time as I'm leaving the store. This time, I'm no longer on the phone. "Well, I found what I was looking for. It wasn't where you said it was." I was sincerely confused by this woman. First off, she was in the decor section, where I had directed her. And second, if she had found what she wanted, why even comment? So it's at this point I finally decide to tell her, "Ma'am, I don't work here. I'm sorry I didn't help you better." She stood there blank-eyed and confused. "You don't?" "No, ma'am. You haven't ever noticed the employees here all wear red shirts and khakis? Or that I was on my cell phone? Have a good day, ma'am. I'm glad you found your lamp. For the sake of all safety, I hope someone else had driven her to the store, because I really don't like the idea of her being out on the road behind the wheel." Am I the jerk for not reimbursing my brother for an air mattress? This happened around Thanksgiving, but I'm still getting crap about it from my family. I'm a 27-year-old woman who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself. My brother, 24, and his significant other, 22, have lived on the opposite side of the country, US, for a few years and decided to fly over to see their respective families, both of whom live around the same area. Neither my brother nor his girlfriend felt comfortable staying with their parents due to lockdown, so I offered them my apartment while I stayed with my significant other for a week. Everyone was happy with this arrangement. We never talked about it specifically before they arrived, so I just assumed that they would sleep in my queen-sized bed. I have a couple of couches in the living area, and while they are comfortable enough, they aren't designed to be sofa beds. The morning they arrived, I cleaned the apartment and changed the bedding. When they got to my apartment, my brother asked where they should sleep, and I indicated in the bed. He sort of laughed at first, and then realized I was serious and got really angry. His girlfriend didn't say much, but looked mortified. My brother kept saying that there was no way they were sleeping in my bed, and it was disgusting for me to offer. I told him that everything was clean and reminded him that they'd have the apartment to themselves. He just kept saying he couldn't believe it and finally snapped that they'd have to make do with the couch. I left quickly without further discussion because I was confused and pretty upset. That night, my brother called me and said the couches were impossible to sleep on. He said that he and his girlfriend needed to purchase an air mattress and requested that I reimburse him the $55 they paid for it. By now, I was really upset and refused. I asked him again, why didn't they just take the bed? And he said,
If you really have to ask, you have major issues.
I said that I didn't care what they did. We're all adults and should act accordingly. He called me disgusting again and hung up. My parents found out and agreed that I should pay for the air mattress because I wasn't adequately prepared for their arrival. My mother especially keeps insinuating that what I did was gross and unfair, and I should have known better. My brother has let it be known that our relationship won't go back to normal until I apologize and reimburse him and his girlfriend. I know my family can be kind of weird and uptight, so I asked my significant other and some friends for their perspective. My boyfriend says he can see both sides, and my friends are basically siding with my parents and brother. Edit. A lot of people are asking if we belong to some strange culture. We do not, and my family has never been religious anyway. But as I stated in my post, they are really uptight. My boyfriend is a lot more open-minded, but he's also very attuned to when people feel uncomfortable and says that even though he disagrees with their reasoning, he can understand why they might not want to sleep in my bed. He thinks I should just pay the $55 to keep the peace. My friends, no idea. Well, what do you think? Should OP pay her brother the $55 for the air mattress or not? Please let us know. No way. But brother should pay OP for letting him stay in her apartment. Am I the jerk for telling my wife I was disappointed in the last-minute gift she got me in front of her parents? First of all, I'm not the type that cares so much about expensive gifts at all. I've never told anyone I wanted expensive gifts or even complained about what I got. But the thing is that my wife and I have been married for 2 years. This is my third Christmas with her parents, one with my family, and before we got married, she used to get me a perfume, a wristwatch, etc. I always buy her jewelry, whether it was her birthday or any other occasion. Really, the only thing she always wants is jewelry. It's fair to say that I can afford her gifts, although lately things have been rough. This Christmas, I got her a $400 set of earrings and necklace. To be honest with you, I could barely afford it, because like I said, things have been rough with my job. She was busy wrapping gifts for her sisters, parents, relatives, and nephew. She insisted that she give me my present at her parents' house. The whole family was there. I gotta say, I did get a few nice gifts from her parents and aunts. She handed everyone their gifts that cost her about $500, and when it was my turn, I was the last one, she handed me a mug. It was clear to me that it was a last-minute gift, and it wasn't even wrapped like the other gifts. I was not expecting that. I was upset, not gonna lie. Everyone noticed except her. She insisted to hear my opinion, and I just told her in all honesty that I was disappointed in her gift. I mean, it's not like she couldn't afford a decent gift. She's a doctor, and besides, a $10 mug wasn't really what I hoped for. The whole room went quiet like I said something huge. It was just my opinion. She got upset with me and went on about how she did her best to find the time to shop for gifts and be with family, despite having a busy schedule and so on. She was starting an argument. I found that members of her family were getting involved, telling me to be more appreciative and that it was never about the cost, etc. It got too much. I went outside and she followed me and started yelling at me about how embarrassed she was when I said I was disappointed in front of her parents and that her parents now think I'm a greedy jerk who cares more about money she makes and bringing it up constantly. I told her that I didn't like that. Despite working a job that doesn't pay much, I was able to get her a decent gift she liked, not some $10 last-minute gift. Again, because this happened before. She argued with me and told me to stop talking about her salary, but I didn't. Really, that's not my point. She was upset all night. I got all kinds of looks from her family and it was awkward. We got home and she refused to sit with me and talk about it and just went to sleep. Then kept repeating that I ruined the holiday for her. Well, what do you think? Did OP do anything wrong or not? Please let us know. You think that's bad? All I got was a stupid lump of coal. Am I the jerk for laughing while my sister was yelling at me about a board game? We, me, husband, sister, brother-in-law, younger siblings, parents, were playing a game where you read a card and vote as to who best fits the description. One of the cards read something along the lines of, "This person is good under pressure." After the votes were counted, my sister, who's 28, was surprised to see she hadn't received any votes and said, "Well, I work at big box store, and you kind of have to be able to deal with pressure. And I, 30, am not good at controlling my face, something I should work on." No one said anything because we all know she has a short fuse, but I apparently gave her a really incredulous look, and she got angry and started going off on me, called me a jerk, and said she's better under pressure than I am. Now, the really bad part She was angrily listing all the reasons she's good under pressure, again, mainly yelling at me, and I started laughing. I admit, I was not sober. She snapped, demanding to know what was so funny, and I said, "Well, you're kind of proving that you're not good under pressure by yelling about it," and laughed some more. She yelled about how I always ruin everything, said the only reason my husband was voted as being good under pressure is because he has to live with me, and stormed off. I found the whole thing funny. Mom said I shouldn't have said anything. I think my sister is actually the one who ruined things by getting upset about the results of the vote in the first place, but maybe I'm the jerk. Edit. Some people have been asking for the name of the game. It's called True Colors. Edit again. We know customer service is hard. We're largely a blue-collar family. My mom recently quit her job at a nursing home that was not following safety measures to avoid becoming sick. I work at an area hospital, and my sister, outside of work, has a habit of getting into trouble and expecting others to fix it. The votes weren't so much about her job, which is certainly stressful, but her life in general. We certainly aren't making fun of her job. Thank you for all the responses. May your days be merry and bright, and all your board games be light. I ignore customers because the boss said so. After graduating college, I worked for about 6 months as a cashier at a local branch of a chain sandwich shop. Mostly it was a great job. Customers were mostly polite. My coworkers were friendly and helpful, and I genuinely believed in the company's products. Even my bosses were pretty great, except for one. We'll call him the jerk. The jerk was belligerent, vindictive, nitpicky, and pretty much an awful boss in every way a boss can be awful. He had the type of crappy, no excuses policy that defined excuse as literally anything besides, "Yes, sir, of course, sir." I could go on and on about all the different ways he was terrible, but this story is about one specific flavor of his awfulness. During our shifts, each employee had a certain section of the store they were assigned to keep clean in addition to their duties. The cashier section was the front counters and displays and the coffee kiosk. I don't know if it was officially the manager's job, but as long as I worked there, whoever was the shift manager always took care of the outside patio area, except for the jerk. At first, he would just say things to me like, "I'm really busy right now. Could you clean the patio?" Which was fine. Part of the job description stated that if you had free time and the manager asked you to do something extra, you did it. He was well within his rights. But one day, he suddenly started asking me why I was shirking my duties by not keeping the patio clean. After all, the patio was part of my section. It wasn't and never had been. I asked the other cashiers, and they all agreed they had never been told anything about the patio being part of the cashier section. I didn't mind helping out with the patio if my other cashier duties were done, but it irked me that he had taken something extra I was doing to be helpful and turned it into something that I was neglecting my duties if I didn't do. It felt like a bait and switch, and I felt cheated. The bigger problem, though, was that keeping the patio clean through my entire shift was a huge pain for me as a cashier. In the afternoons, I was often the only one at the counter, and customers would trickle in with a few minutes between each group. This meant that I was constantly having to run back and forth between the patio and the register, which confused customers and made it hard to get any actual work done on the patio. One day, when this was particularly bad, the jerk came up front and started asking me why I hadn't cleaned the patio. I started to explain that I kept having to come back inside to serve customers, but he cut me off. I don't remember his exact words, but it was something along the lines of, "That's no excuse. Cleaning the patio is part of your job. Now go outside and do your job. Don't come back inside until the patio is clean." That last sentence was music to my ears. I assured him that of course I would do exactly as he said, went outside and started cleaning. A few minutes later, a family walked past me through the front doors into the store. Through the large front window, I watched them stand, confused in front of the register. There was no one at it to serve them. The jerk had gone back into his office to attend his oh-so-important manager duties. I continued to clean the patio. A few minutes later, another family came in and joined the first, standing confused and now annoyed in front of the counter. At this point, the jerk must have noticed them on the security camera because he came out of his office and started ringing them up. Then came another set of customers, and another. The jerk was at the register, so he had to serve them. He was now being forced to cover my job because I was too busy doing his. I finished cleaning the patio and came inside, and the jerk immediately tore into me, asking where I had been, why wasn't I at the counter, couldn't I see there were customers? I put on my most innocent smile. But you told me not to come back inside until I'd finished cleaning the patio. I assumed that meant you would take care of serving customers, since I couldn't possibly be two places at the same time." He just glared at me for the longest moment, then mumbled something about how I should have known what he meant and I was never to pull a stunt like that again, and shuffled back to his office. Not much of a victory in the grand scheme of things, but seeing the momentary flash of panic in his eyes as he realized his "do as I say, no excuses" policy had backfired had me giddy for the rest of the day. Mother decides it's time I get married to some random guy and not my boyfriend. A little necessary background. I am currently no contact with my parents and siblings and have been for over a year. Extended family I'm okay with and spend a lot of time with. I currently live with my boyfriend, which my entire family is aware of but don't know much. We're also Desi and my boyfriend is white. For Christmas, I visited my aunt and cousins to drop off presents. It was a socially distant exchange, but I stayed a while to chat about things. Whenever I see my aunt, she tends to give me important updates about my parents and immediate family. For example, I knew my mom broke her arm or that my brother and his wife moved closer to home. Things like that. So my aunt had a little tidbit she wanted to share with me before I headed out. And, "So, your mom has a proposal for you." Apparently, a family friend had reached out to my mother, not knowing about our no-contact situation, and thought that her son would have been a perfect match for me. I literally know nothing about this guy, but my mother apparently rushed ahead agreeing with this friend. She sent my photo and information, and that friend loved me apparently. My mother then called my aunt, sent her the guy's photo and information, and cried, saying she didn't know how to get in contact with me to share the good news, and asked if she would reach out to me and show me the photo. My mother kept stressing that he's a good boy from a good family, and we know this person and that person, and how it'd be a great match, and he lives in Chicago, so I could be under my sister's nose. One sister lives in Chicago, while married, and oh, wouldn't it be so wonderful? My aunt responded with, okay, yeah, sure, and didn't really give my mother an opinion. While speaking to my aunt about this, I was incredulous. She is all for mending my relationship with my family, but understands and respects my space. My aunt is well aware that my boyfriend and I live together, so she took what my mother said with a grain of salt. But oh my God, I'm just appalled by my mother and what she thinks is okay to say about me to other people. Am I the jerk for posting in the group chat about a theft committed by guests of my housemate? I live in a house with 3 other people. All 4 of us are on the tenancy agreement. Over the Christmas period, 3 of the 4 housemates, me included, left town to spend the holidays with our respective families. The final flatmate remained in the house. After a week away, I returned home to find my room was a mess. My bed looked like it had been slept in. Someone had left half-empty cups and bottles of alcohol sitting around. Red wine had been spilt on my floor, and my bin was overflowing with the wine-soaked toilet paper, which I assumed was what they used to clean up the spill. Whoever had been in there had also moved some things from their usual places and placed them elsewhere in the room. They even left a snotty tissue behind for me to find. I checked the rest of the house, including the 3 other bedrooms, and everything was normal, but I could definitely tell a party had happened on the bottom floor, which is where the kitchen, lounge, and outdoor area are. Nobody was even home when I discovered the state of my room, so I took pictures of my room and posted in the house group chat asking what the heck happened. The housemate who hadn't gone away admitted she had invited 5 people over for drinks, but claimed she hadn't realized that any of her guests had made their way to the top floor where my bedroom is. I was super angry at this point, and I struggled to believe she hadn't been aware, but I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, so I ignored her message and got to work cleaning the mess that they had made in my room. This is when I realized my AirPods charger had been stolen. The charger isn't expensive. There were much more valuable things in my bedroom that could have been taken, but this charger also allows me to charge my phone and AirPods, 2 things I always carry, at the same time, so I wanted it back. I went back to our group chat and sent another message saying, "Can you ask your guests to please return my AirPods charger?" That housemate then sent me a private message accusing me of being too harsh and saying I shouldn't have posted about the theft in the group chat for the others to see. I told her that the other housemates have a right to know that a stranger, or multiple strangers, have been walking around the house apparently unsupervised, made themselves at home in at least one of our bedrooms, and taken something that doesn't belong to them. Because there's every possibility they'll return from their holidays and notice one of their belongings has also disappeared. She thinks I'm trying to make her look bad to the others, and the whole thing has turned into an ugly war of words via Messenger. A part of me is starting to believe I shouldn't have posted in the group chat, especially because the theft was relatively minor and the tone of my message was clearly hostile, but at the same time, I don't think I've actually done anything wrong. So my question for you guys is, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for posting about the theft in the group chat or not? Please let us know. Not at all. I think they need to team up and kick her out. Karen loses it at Build-A-Bear. A while ago, I posted a story about my first Karen encounter at Build-A-Bear. For those of you who have never seen or been to a Build-A-Bear, it's the most awesome store in any mall. You pick out an unstuffed friend, fill it up, add extras like a scent or a sound, pick out clothing, name it, and take it home. Now, Build-A-Bear has a ton of licensed products, including The Nightmare Before Christmas. Every year around Halloween, people ask us if we have Jack Skellington or Sally because those are the two bears that get sent to stores. Another thing to note, since lockdown, inventory for our store and all the stores has been weird. Normally, we'd get a truck every single week, but with what's been going on, our schedule has been spotty. Now, when we get our Nightmare Before Christmas items, I notice something. I can't find Sally's dress. In fact, none of us can. Then we realize they didn't send us any of Sally's dresses. We call other stores, the same thing. No one in our area has Sally's dress. This isn't usually an issue because kids will dress up their bears in whatever. One kid got a bright pink unicorn and dressed it up as Darth Vader, so Sally doesn't have to have her dress. Well, according to Karen, she had to. It's the weekend, so we were fairly busy. This family comes in with a mom, 2 grandmas, and 2 kids. As usual, I think everything is fine until the girl wants Sally. My coworker, we'll call her Ava, is helping them when Karen asks about Sally's dress. Ava explains to her that we don't have Sally's dress in stock, nor do any of the other stores have it. And that is when Karen went from polite to just plain rude. Karen asks Ava why we don't have the dress, and again, Ava explains. Karen still doesn't understand why we didn't have the dress and starts demanding we try to get it for her. Ava, bless her soul, brings Karen over to the computer to show her why we can't just buy the dress. I'm on stuffing duty, and one of the kids, a boy who I'll call Thing 1, wants Jack. Again, I think the kid is fine until I realize he doesn't understand the concept of staying in line or going in order. To keep things simple, Build-A-Bear has an order. You pick out your friend, we ask if you want a sound, then you stuff. The reason for this is that the sound has to go into the bear before we stuff him. Now, I do remember one of my coworkers asking Thing 1 if he wanted a sound. The sound wasn't in the bear, so I assumed his parents said no. But then he mentions he wants a sound, so I have to get up, get Jack's sound, and then start again. While I'm doing this, the kid is running back and forth to his mom. This kid is like 6 or 7. He should know better than to run in a store, but whatever. Jack is stuffed, so I give it to the boy to hug. Then I tell him about the hearts. All friends get a felt heart, but you can get special hearts that beat like a real one. Thing 1 squeezes the special heart and says he wants that one. He begs the 2 grandmas and then runs over to his mom again. Now, had he been the only customer in the store, it'd be fine, but we have a fairly big line, and he was making the process longer. Thankfully, Thing 1 comes back and Karen vetoed the heart, so I finish up the bear. Story over, right? Nope. Karen is furious that we don't have Sally's dress. Keep in mind, Ava has explained to her many times that we cannot order the dress because it's part of the bundle. Karen apparently doesn't care. For the rest of her visit, she keeps making snide comments about the dress. Why don't they have it? It shouldn't be that hard. I wish this store had the dress. Blah, blah, blah. Then, when she comes over with her daughter, Thing 2, they hold up the line even more because they did the same thing Thing 1 did with the sound. And once again, Karen keeps making snide comments about the dress, saying how ridiculous it is that we don't have the dress. Not only was she making these comments, but she didn't smile once as I performed the heart ceremony and continued to talk about the dress throughout the store. When she left, we said, "Have a good day." She replied with, "I doubt it." Karen, please never come back to my Build-A-Bear, and I kinda hope you never find Sally's dress. Have you ever been to Build-A-Bear? If so, what kind of bear did you make? Please let us know. I want a matching Mr. Reddit and Karen bear. That's a really good idea. We should get in touch with them about that. The day I lit an ambulance on fire. Several years ago, I was working as an EMT for a small private ambulance company which contracted primarily as a transportation service. The ambulance company employed a pair of mechanics that did regular maintenance on each unit and fixed problems when they came up. The company's CEO was pretty stingy when it came to money, so the rigs were old and a lot of the mechanics' spare time went towards restoring the Impala owned by the CEO's son. I wasn't well liked by the owners and management for one reason or another, but I suspect it's because I frequently spoke my mind. This means that I was tasked with the worst trucks on the worst shifts. One day, my partner and I were dispatched to a scheduled patient transfer from a long-term rehabilitation facility to their home. On our way to the facility, our ambulance overheated and we were forced to pull over. Dispatch was notified and we were told to let them know when the truck cooled so we could get back to work. An hour later, the truck was still hotter than I'd like, and I let dispatch know that we needed a new unit. Their solution was to have us drive back and swap our gear into a fresh unit to finish our shift. We would need to drive across town to get back to dispatch, so I let them know that it would take a while as we'd need to pull over every time the engine overheated. Little else was discussed and we started back. I figured I'd stick to the smaller side roads and take my time avoiding the freeways for the safety of ourselves and other drivers sharing the road. I should also mention that every ambulance has a GPS reporting system that reports all of our telemetry, so we're tracked every moment of every day. The moment we pass the first entrance to the freeway, the dispatch manager, we'll call her Mary, calls us on the radio and angrily asks us to explain why we're not following instructions. I opted to give her a phone call to settle this and not have a long drawn-out discussion on the public airwaves. Mary accuses my partner and I of wasting time and milking the situation so we wouldn't have to take our share of calls. Mary goes on saying that our intentions were obvious since we're not taking the freeway, and as such, when we got back to dispatch, we would be dismissed for the remainder of the day without pay, and they would investigate to see if further disciplinary actions would be needed. I tried to let her know that driving on the freeway was unsafe and I would have to stop more frequently, but she wouldn't hear it and told me to get back as fast as possible. No more delays. Cue malicious compliance. Our patient monitoring equipment is incredibly expensive, and management has stated in the past that if we break it, we're on the hook to replace it. So I tell my partner to pack it all up and put it just inside the side door because I wasn't sure what would happen, but chances were good that we'd need to grab it quickly and make a run for it. So, as directed, we turn around and head back to the freeway entrance at full speed. I think we made it to the end of the freeway merging lane when the temperature gauge started to redline and we had another 12 miles to go. The further I drove, the hotter the engine got and it started to produce white smoke. Lightly at first, then heavier as we approached the big hill just before our freeway exit. Several cars were passing us and honking their horns to alert us of our peril, but there was no stopping this train. We were filling up the lanes behind us with smoke, and the smell was wretched, but the ambulance was still running. As we made it to the top of the hill, the engine cut off and we lost all power. Smoke was pouring out of the sides of the hood, but my vision wasn't compromised, so I coasted it over to the shoulder and got it as far off the road as I could safely manage to. Once I threw it into park, flames erupted from the engine. I told my partner to get as much equipment evacuated as she could, and I grabbed the fire extinguisher. As I'm trying to put out the fire, my partner is on the phone, letting dispatch know that we were forced to stop because our ambulance was on its way to a fiery death. I guess at this point, our situation had received enough attention that someone had called 911 and the fire department was dispatched, but they pulled up on the opposite side of the freeway watching to make sure that things didn't spiral out of control. We were sure to let dispatch know that the fire department had also arrived. Shortly after our call, the CEO's son showed up in his Impala to pick up the equipment, as well as myself and my partner. He was on the phone trying to get a flatbed tow truck out as fast as possible so his smoking ambulance could be removed from the public view as quickly as possible. The unit was picked up and towed back to the garage, all while the fire department sat and watched. My partner and I were still sent home for the rest of the day. I celebrated the early start to my weekend with a few drinks, and nothing else ever came of it. That unit was retired and never saw service after that, but the mechanics said they owed me a beer, I guess because I brought the end to their worst rig in their fleet and they no longer needed to provide upkeep on it. Am I the jerk for blowing up over a Christmas tradition being exploited? My family has a tradition where every year we will each draw a name of a family member around June for a Secret Santa. You make a Christmas gift for that person, which is supposed to be their one gift that year. This year, I drew my sister and decided to make a blanket set. She sends me pictures of things she likes, and I looked through some of them before deciding on a pattern. Christmas Day came, and my sister was smiling brightly at receiving the set, plus the extra one I made her husband, married for 5 years, so he knows the tradition. It's important to note that each person in my family has a different craft we excel at, so even though it's supposed to be a secret Santa, you typically know who made what. I knew on my turn that I only could have received a present from one of two people: brother-in-law, Blanket's sister's husband, or my other sister who paints. I was hopeful that brother-in-law drew my name since he is into woodcrafting, and gifts he has given in the previous years were beautiful. To my delight, I was right that he drew my name. The present was lackluster to say the least. A pair of socks, a t-shirt, and a pair of yoga pants. All in colors my sister knows I really dislike, and all in her size. I tried to smile, but I was extremely disappointed. Then my brother-in-law looked uncomfortable throughout the day, asking how long I had worked on the blanket set. He seemed surprised when I said that I had started in September. Later I heard them talking and found out my sister had bought the items I was given. This was a sister who the previous year had drawn my name and had given me yarn she bought at a garage sale, then started showing off the diamond necklace her husband had given her. I'm disappointed, hurt, and starting to suspect that brother-in-law either forgot until the last minute and got some things that my sister bought for herself to use as a gift, or that my sister said she'd get something and just threw something together at the last minute. When I left our get-together that night, I purposefully left the present on my brother-in-law's things. Today, my sister, over a Zoom call with my family, demanded an apology for my rudeness. She either didn't realize or didn't care that she was wearing the shirt that was supposedly my gift. I blew up, yelling that our Secret Santa tradition was being exploited by her to be a greedy jerk, demanding nice and extravagant gifts while not even spending $10 or a little bit of effort on anyone aside from herself. I pointedly stated that I wasn't going to be participating if this was how things were going to go, and hung up. My other sister is in my corner, my dad is on the fence, and my mom is demanding I make the apology. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is her sister? Please let us know. It's amazing how many stories we've read lately about Christmas gifts. All I got was a lump of coal. Demands my skills for free. So I got a bobbin lace starter kit and extra bobbins for Christmas. My grandmother made a bobbin lace and I wanted to try too. So I spent 5 hours making a little bookmark. Now, bobbin lace is becoming a lost art. Less people are making it and fewer are wanting to learn, so it's also a valued artisan craft. I should have just listened to my gut. I showed a picture of the lace to a coworker who also crafts. They knit, but they would appreciate the art. The picture shows that it's clearly a piece of beginner's work. Oh, cool. So you can make me one now too, right? Me. Not really. I'm doing this just to learn and make some stuff for myself. I'll most likely never take commission for lace. It took me 5 hours to do this. The bookmark was 4 inches long. But you can just make me the same one. Surely you won't miss one piece of lace. I grit my teeth, mildly annoyed. People tended to push me for my other craft too. No, and besides, I doubt you want to pay my hourly rate for custom crafting. I charge $10 an hour for crafts larger than gloves or scarves. So sewing, quilting, knitting, and crocheting. Tatting and baking is $10 an hour. No exceptions unless I'm doing it for fun or my immediate family. Wait, pay you? Why would I pay you for a tiny piece of lace? Because it takes hours to make, so I charge for work I have to do versus work I want to do. Well, you'll never sell your lace that way. That's the point. She huffed as I walked off. I was more than a little annoyed that yet another person wants my skills for free. Am I the jerk for not financially helping family and friends despite being able to? My son Nick was born with a congenital heart defect 17 years ago. It required a $60,000 surgery in Israel if he was to survive past 12 months. I've spent the first 3 months of his life running around, begging people and searching for money. My parents gave us $100. They had well-paying jobs and guaranteed state pensions. When I asked my brother for help, he mumbled something about needing to save for his daughter's college. She never went, by the way. Anyone who met her could have told him that much. They did take a regular vacation overseas, though. My department of 40 at work donated $30 and a card. At one point, I was seriously searching for ways to sell my kidney and liver. My in-laws sold their apartment for $35,000. Best friend gave me another $7,000, which was all he had. Accepting his help was one of the few times I cried in my adult life. I sold my car and every piece of furniture and electronics that wasn't bolted to the walls. My in-laws moved in, and we spent the next 5 years living together. 5 people crammed into a 2-bedroom. Surgery was a success. As fate has it, I started a hustle and it took off. After years of hard work, I moved our headquarters to a Central European country to be closer to our EU clients. Even discounting for about 2/3 of my wealth that is tied up in the business, I am a multimillionaire. My in-laws now have a 4-bedroom house. We pay for them to go on vacations 3 to 4 times a year, or did before 2020. My son is a hard worker who makes me a very proud father. I can't say that I hate those who didn't help back in the day. Hate is a strong word. Rather, I feel like I've learned my lesson and don't expect anything from them. I don't invite my parents for visits. They're welcome to pay for their flights in a hotel room, but I won't cover their expenses like I do with the in-laws. My brother asked for a loan to start his business 5 years ago. I said the time wasn't right. 2 months ago, his daughter got into a car accident. Nothing seemingly life-threatening, but a lot of nasty scarring on her legs that require a costly cosmetic surgery. I suggested he look into downsizing, as I am focused on helping my kids get good education. Old coworkers who wanted to join my business once it took off were told to apply through the regular process, except for my best friend. He's been my partner from the start, and I sleep better at night knowing we've got each other's backs. It comes without saying, there have been lots of very unhappy people in my life. In our culture, you're expected to support your community and family, do favors. Nepotism is very much an ingrained thing. You're supposed to bring over your family if you're lucky enough to root yourself in the Western world, help friends immigrate. My parents told me to my face they are ashamed of me and how the Western culture has changed me. I've been called many things, way worse than jerk and heartless. After hearing my story, tell me Reddit, am I though? Edit. To those wondering why my parents had a pretty lukewarm response, if you can even call it that, the surgery had a 40% success rate. They thought we should let nature run its course and instead try for a new baby. It may sound horrendous to Westerners, but it's not that cold of a statement to someone in our home country. But obviously, wife and I didn't take it well. Edit. Highway Girl 2004. I will talk to my wife about helping our niece. I stand by what I said. It's on her for putting herself in this position and her parents to help her fix it. So I won't cover the whole cost, but I will ask my wife if we should cover half. The more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards this being the right answer. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I know your boss, so I expect a discount. Has anyone ever worked for a company where the company name includes what seems to be someone's first name? Our family surname doubles as a first name. Most first names surnames have an S at the end, such as Andrews, Collins, Edwards, etc. But occasionally you get the ones without the S, such as psychic John Edward. We owned a breakdown towing service in Australia. A lot of people decided that they should get free towing or reduced rates. Our company name was our surname, with an S followed by towing service. Let's use Philip, not our real name. Practically every week I would get a phone call from someone saying that they were a friend of Philip's, and he had told them they could get a free tow or a $10 tow. In Sydney, most basic towing starts around $60 for a tow around a corner. My response would be, which member of the Phillips family, sir? It was always a male. What do you mean? I know Philip. Philip is a surname, sir, and there are 4 members of the family who work in the business. Who are you friends with, sir? Click. Obviously, these people didn't care if the person who organized the tow got fired for not getting paid or not charging enough. They were entitled to use the service for free or for their decided amount. When I was working as a receptionist, I had someone ring one day and tell me that they were my boss's doctor. I called my boss and said that there was someone on the phone who said he was the boss doctor, and the boss told me to put the call through. Turned out to be someone who was selling timeshares who had worked out a way of getting past the receptionist to their target. After that, I asked the name so I could confirm who was actually calling. Am I the jerk for not letting my mother-in-law move in with us after we have our baby? I'm in a very happy marriage, with just one tiny issue. My husband's mother is very, as he would put it, Asian. She didn't initially take kindly to me for being white. Years later, she's a lot better, but now that we're expecting, she's gotten very involved in our lives, and it's starting to drive me nuts. She really wants to come help after the baby comes. Her first offer was to raise the baby herself for a few years. It took a bit of back and forth, but we managed to put our foot down to say that we wanted to raise our baby ourselves. The next offer has been to come move in with us and help with cooking and cleaning and the like for 6 months to a year after. Although it certainly would be nice to have more help with cooking and cleaning, she hates dogs, and we have 2. Her main hobby is standing in the kitchen and singing very loudly. She tends to barge in on us at random intervals throughout the night to ask for random things. She only communicates with my husband in commands. Nothing you do is ever good enough for her, and my biggest and strangest gripe is she really wants to cook for us all the time after the baby comes. But she's not the best cook and accidentally hits me with foods I'm allergic to. Although to her credit, she's trying really hard to not do this, and this is mostly a problem with not being able to read English labels at the grocery store. My husband's biggest gripe is the singing. Both him and his father will frequently crack and leave the house when it starts to go on for 4 hours. We're trying to negotiate with her so that she still feels useful and that she can see the baby. But she was very insulted over Christmas when we suggested we get her a separate apartment instead of staying in our condo for the first 6 months to a year after the baby comes. And I've been told by everyone in my immediate family that isn't my husband that I'm being selfish and that I should just let her move in and help because we'll need it. But I'm not sure how I can handle both her and the baby. So, am I the jerk here? I'm trying my best to do damage control and find a good solution, but man, is this tough. Well, what do you think? Should they let their mother-in-law move in or not? Please let us know. I know I wouldn't. My brother deleted my Siege account. I got revenge. Okay, context time. I, 17, male, live with my parents and brother, who's 13. We had gotten a PS4 a few Christmases ago. My brother had downloaded Fortnite on it and was mad addicted. He even went to desperate measures as to sneaking the controller out of our parents' room during the day/night. Now, story time. Sometimes I would go into my brother's room, see him on the PS4, and ask, "Do mom and dad know you're on that?" His response, "What's it matter to you?" I'd tell him, "I just want to make sure you asked first." He'd tell me, "Just go away and quit being nosy." This went on for several months. I didn't think it would be so bad until one day while he was at school, I decided to hop onto Spider-Man for PS4. Great game, by the way. I had discovered food wrappers in his drawers, shelves, you name it. I decided to confront him about it when he got home. Convo goes as follows. Me: "Hey, little brother, did you want to explain something to me?" Little brother: "Not now. I'm gonna hop on Fortnite." Me: "Do you want to tell me why I found food wrappers in your shelves?" Brother got defensive. "Why did you look through my stuff? Mind your business." Me: "You do know that we aren't allowed to eat in our rooms, right?" "I can do whatever I want. Eat in here and sneak the controller out, and you can't say anything about it." Me: "Whatever, dude." Then what he said took action in my brain. I really could say something about it. However, I would need proof of this deal. That caused me to grind some gears and get to work. While he was at school, I decided to take pictures of the food wrappers, hidden controller, and a few other things. I compiled them into a file on my gallery and waited for the right moment. Unfortunately, waiting was my downfall. I later found out my brother had got the password for my phone and deleted that file. I was livid at the fact. I had gotten on the PlayStation and played some Apex Legends. My brother came home, demanding I get off so he could play. He told me about how he's going to continue this act and how he got the password for my phone and deleted my evidence file. I said forget it and got off. One day, I tried to log into my account on Rainbow Six Siege, but it said my account was non-existent. I tried several times, but no luck. Later, I found out my brother hopped onto my Siege account and deleted it. I confronted him about it when he came home, and he smiled and said, "Maybe I wouldn't have to do that if you didn't try to bust me." Never have I been so angry, hopeless, and sad. Years of progress gone. All those operators, skins, attachments, everything gone. I felt defeated, but then a moment of hope shined. My mom asked me to see if I could find my brother's Bible, as she wanted to see if it was still intact. My plan B was going to take place. Basically, instead of actually looking for the Bible, I stood in the room for about 20 minutes and made some racket to make it sound like I was looking for it. After the 20 minutes, I yelled for Mom. "Hey, I can't find it. Could you help me?" Why I did that? Let me explain. Instead of getting evidence of my brother's shenanigans, I would have Mom help me look, but instead have her find everything. When looking, she found one food wrapper and she asked, "Do you know where this came from?" To which I replied, "Not a clue." This leads her to find the following items hidden: 3 Pringles cans, 5 empty sodas, some Ritz cracker packages, an entire box of Andes mints, and some other stuff. She also found where my brother hid the controller. She was so livid she could barely contain herself. She confronted brother about it, and this was her punishment to him. She unplugged both the TV and PS4 cord so he couldn't get on, hid the controllers, we had 3 of them, in her closet, then locked it with the only key and took away his tablet. Instead of going to see a movie, I think it was Sonic, with some family friends and going to their house afterwards, he had to stay home with my dad and clean up his own room. A few days later, he tried to scold me. Conversation goes as follows. Little brother.
I hope you're happy with yourself.
Me. What do you mean?
I can't play Fortnite anymore, and it's your fault.
Me. Actually, it's your fault. You tried to shove me away when I confronted you, but you still continued your act. Mom busted you, and now your privileges are gone. Little brother.
I'm gonna make sure you suffer for this.
Me. Good luck. Also, Mom talked about putting the PS4 in my room. Thought I might let you know.
What? But that's not fair.
Nothing is fair when you get busted.
You will give me the PlayStation back, or I'll steal it from your room.
Me. Try it. I'm sure my audio recording will tell Mom your motives. He finally gave up and stormed off. He's gonna kiss Fortnite goodbye for a while. Never have I been so satisfied. Entitled Mom Wanted My Shifts did not go well for her. After reading a related story somewhere else, my memory was jogged for this gem of a coworker a couple years back. I pull the early shift in a gas station/car wash. My workday ends at 1 p.m. As the senior shift manager of several years, the boss had permanently assigned me to that shift, in part because of my rockstar punctuality. Waking up at 3 a.m. every day isn't for everyone, but it is for me. Entitled Mom had been with us for a few months, became a shift lead, and immediately began complaining about always having the night shift, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., and how she never got to see her kids off the bus, and how because I'm not a parent, I should take whatever shift parents don't want. After weeks of nagging and claiming that her rights were being violated, I and the owner called her bluff. We tried a little experiment. For 1 week, I agreed to swap. Monday, she opens 20 minutes late. Boss gives her a verbal. Tuesday, on time, no problem. Wednesday, 5 minutes late, another gentle reminder. Thursday, 55 minutes late. She gets a written warning and the experiment is over. All our deliveries come in the early hours and had to be rescheduled. Friday, I open on time. Of course, this isn't the end of it. She complains that waking up that early shouldn't be possible for anyone, especially a parent, because raising kids is hard work. No argument there, but then she suggests that both of us do splits. Splits that would actually take hours away from me. She wants me to work from 5 to 8 a.m., have her from 8 to 2, then have me come back 2 to 5 and her 5 to 9. Boss dismissed that one right out of hand and told her that I have my set schedule because I have earned that set schedule by always being on time for it. She threatened, then actually did call the Department of Labor to lodge a discrimination complaint, which they quickly dismissed. She was hired for any available shift, which she accepted at hire. She ended up quitting, then blasting us hard on social media, saying parents deserve special treatment. We are anti-family. I am, but not vocal about it at work, etc. Boss told me she would humor no further experiments. The only way someone else is getting my coveted shifts is if I quit. Edit. Perhaps I spoke too harshly. I am very much a you do you person. I'm just against special societal privileges for people just by virtue of their choice to reproduce. Well, what do you think? Should Karen have gotten the shift she wanted or not? Please let us know. Maybe they should hire her to do security instead. Nobody wants to mess with a Karen. A Karen bridesmaid meets an unmovable force. My mother. A conversation with fellow crafters reminded me of this story, so I figured I'd share. Some quick background. My baby brother was born very ill, and the long hospital stays and expensive meds kicked in around 6 months old. To cope with the huge medical bills, Mom worked some odd jobs over the years, including making custom wedding and bridesmaids gowns. My mother had a few very die-hard rules. Number 1, she did all of your measurements. I heard the lecture of vanity fibbing only results in a poorly fitting dress, more times than I can count. Number 2, all final fittings must be completed at least 3 weeks before the wedding. That way, if Dewey had an emergency hospital stay, she'd have time to arrange for someone to sit with him while she went home to finish a job. He was nonverbal and needed a constant companion. This particular bride wanted all of her bridesmaids in pastel organza dresses. Organza is a gauzy fabric. The base dresses were white, covered with these colors. Unfortunately, the bride had more bridesmaids than pastel shades of fabric that came in, meaning one lucky bridesmaid wore tan. The bride refused to start a fight by assigning colors, so it was first come, first serve. When you came for measurements, you got to pick from the remaining colors. One bridesmaid lived 3 hours away and flat out refused to come to town to be measured. She insisted that telling us she was a size 8 was good enough. Bridal sizes are very different and didn't cleanly convert, so that meant nothing. Mom finally reached the compromise that a local seamstress could measure her and send in the measurements. 1 month before this wedding, Dewey was admitted into the ICU to be placed on a ventilator. Mom now had to find coverage enough to get 8 dresses finished off in the next 2 or so weeks. She pulled it off thanks to amazing friends, but it was tight. Dad was busy working overtime to pay the bills and dealing with us other 2 kids. Well, this jerk bridesmaid, BB from now on, still refused to have a final fitting more than 2 days before the wedding. She didn't want to waste a trip just because my mom was a horrible seamstress who didn't understand proper sizing. I was cleaning up seed pearls during that lovely conversation. My mom begged a friend to sit with Dewey for an entire day so she could do the fitting and adjustments all at once. Karen was 2 hours late. When she arrived, she saw the hideous tan dress and began literally screaming about how it wasn't fair and my mom must have picked that color. She demanded another bridesmaid return their dress and both dresses got swapped colors. It would have been 20+ hours of work, so mom laughed and told her that was a big no. The bride arrived and told her friend that color was the only option left and she was sorry, but it was that or drop out of the wedding and pay for the dress anyways. Karen finally agreed to put it on. Yeah, she had lied about her size. When the zipper didn't go all the way up, Mom whipped out the measuring tape only to discover this jerk had shaved 1 to 2 inches off every measurement except height. Her defense was that she wasn't going to let a jealous seamstress lie about her, so she fixed the numbers before passing them on. By this point, my mom was all but breathing fire. Her son's life hung in the balance, and this lunatic was making her life heck. My mom demanded double for the dress because she was going to have to add strips to the base white dress to make it big enough, then make a whole new overdress for Morganza. It was doubling the time and adding substantially to fabric costs. Karen fought over it, and my mom finally told her, "Fine, pay me the agreed upon amount and take your dress as is." Now, the bride herself was bullying Karen into just paying up. She finally agreed to it, and my mom told the bride to get Karen out of her house. They could come back in 5 hours to get the dress. Thankfully, the redone dress was a perfect fit. Karen paid the remaining balance and left after that. The day my brother passed, my mom refused to ever make another wedding dress. She's only made one in the 21 years since as a favor to a friend who spent that ill-fated day with Dewey in the ICU while mom fought with Karen. Have you ever been to a wedding? And if so, what did you think of it? Please let us know. The cake is the only thing I'm concerned with. Am I the jerk for losing it when my husband used my brother's surgery money to buy his dad a car? I, female 25, have been married to my husband, male 27, for 2 years. My mom passed recently, and I let my brother, who's 16, move in with us. I'm taking care of everything for him, his education, his health, everything. He has a chronic respiratory disease, and he already has a savings account because my mom was saving up for his surgery in 2021. I moved the money into our account for several reasons, including issues from the bank itself. Ever since I began working, I started contributing as well. My husband knows well that that money isn't for us just because it's in our account. I repeatedly told him that he cannot make any purchases nor move that money without talking to me to make sure we don't touch the money that belongs to my brother. I just found out 2 days ago that my husband bought his dad a car that cost nearly $13,000. I was confused. I only heard this from his parents. We only had about $6,000 in our account aside from my brother's money. I got home and I asked him where he got the money. First, he said he'd talk about it in the morning because he was too tired to argue with me. My patience was running out. I asked him again and he told me he used some of my brother's money to pay for the car. I was stunned. He started making excuses about how his dad needed it and how much he was struggling and no one was willing to help. He said he didn't want to buy a cheap car so he won't have to suffer and take it to the shop every other day. I lost it and yelled at him and told him that this money was for my brother that my mom saved for his condition. He said he knew and didn't have a choice, said that he didn't want to tell me because of my reaction and that he borrowed some of the money and will find a way to pay it back soon. We got into a huge argument that lasted for 2 hours. I called his mom and told her about the car my father-in-law got, that he used my brother's money without even telling me. He lashed out at me after his mom found out and he got into an argument with his parents. He said that I shouldn't get them involved and I should have taken his word instead of freaking out and yelling at him. I couldn't take it. I took my brother and just went to stay with my aunt. He never stopped calling and apologizing, calling himself stupid and just wanting to help his dad. I haven't replied to his texts, and my aunt said that I shouldn't have yelled at him and instead sat down for a conversation. He keeps saying he'll pay the money back, but I know he can't. Well, who do you agree with? OP or her husband? Please let us know. If you ever touch my money, I'll pop that head of yours like a balloon. I need your long essay on a single page. Yes, ma'am. When I was a college sophomore, we had this professor, Mrs. Wang, in religion studies who would act like her subject should be our top priority. Although we came from different majors, religion studies is just a filler subject needed for students in this Catholic college. She wanted us to come to every meeting because attendance is a part of her grade, which was fine by me. But she would give us too many research assignments for so little time. This class is a Tuesday through Thursday one, so if she gives us 3 research assignments on Tuesday, the outputs are expected to be submitted on Thursday same week. This started a problem on all of us since we also have a lot of things to do from major subjects. But it would be a hassle to fail a subject like this. Retaking a major subject is acceptable. Retaking a filler subject is annoying. One Tuesday, she gave us an assignment, a 4,000-word essay to be submitted on Thursday. 4,000 is a lot for us given the time frame. And that week was the week before midterms, so it gave us a hard time. But the catch, she wanted it on a single sheet of short bond paper, which is literally impossible to fit the 4,000-word essay. A classmate of mine, Nathan, asked Mrs. Wang about the single-page thing. Nathan asked if we could submit multiple pages of the essay to accommodate the 4,000-word essay she was asking us. You are all stubborn. 4,000-word essay is a single page. That's simple. Mrs. Wang was already in her early 60s at that time, so I don't think she had an idea of what a compressed 4,000-word in a single page would look like when printed. In every subject, we have a Facebook group for announcements, discussions between classmates, and note sharing. In some subjects, the teacher was usually the admin of the group, but since Mrs. Wang is not too fond of Facebook, one of our classmates volunteered to create a group for us. The night before the submission, we were having a problem with our outputs. Some classmates who were done with the essay tried to print their outputs. The font was too small, even though the margin was already adjusted. Here comes the malicious compliance. Nathan, who was still a little upset about the whole situation, posted a status on our group. Let's give her what she wants. 4,000 words in a single page. The comments were blowing up. Some commented that they were thinking of the same, and others were laughing. That time, the ha 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 reaction button wasn't still a thing, so literal ha 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 were filling up in the comments. The next day, we were all excited about our plan. One by one, we placed our papers on her table. As she was scanning on some papers, she went ballistic. Why are these words so small? Nathan raised his hand. Ma'am, you were clear about a 4,000-word essay on a single page. That's what it looks like. Mrs. Wang couldn't contain her anger. She realized she was wrong. Instead of apologizing, she just told us to reprint our outputs and submit them on Tuesday next week. We all agreed. Have you ever had a teacher demand something ridiculous from you? If so, what was it? Please let us know. Watch yourself, teacher. I know where you park. Complain about me logging into my phone 30 seconds late? I'll work my hours, but cost you money. My first job out of bar school was with an ambulance chasing firm. I worked 12 to 8 p.m. in the call center calling people after accidents to get them to sign with us for a personal injury claim. Officially, this was not cold calling as the details were passed to us by insurance companies who assured us that each lead had confirmed injuries and asked to speak to a lawyer. I have my doubts over how truthful the insurers were after a number of people I called denied any injury or seemed surprised to be contacted by a solicitor's firm, but that is not the cause of this story. I was very good at my job. Our target was for 10 new claims a day, so if you got a car with driver and passenger in the front and 3 kids in the back, you were laughing as that one call was half your quota. Many colleagues would go on to a go slow once they had their 10, but I kept busy. If nothing else, it was boring there when not working and time dragged, and would average about 25 new clients a day. After 6 months, we get a new manager in the call center. He's one of those micromanager types, which is a style I do not respond well to. I start getting emails saying things like, "You were 30 seconds late logging into the system today. Make sure you stay late by that much time." Now I should point out that up until now, I had logged out at the end of my shift, being on time, unless I was on a call, in which case I would finish it. And if this was a call with 5 people in it, you could be stuck for another 45 minutes. We also had to turn the computers off at the end of the day. Easy, hit shut down and walk off, and then turn them on at the start of our shift. The computers being slow, this could take 5 minutes before you could log into your call system. I responded to the first few emails, pointing out that logging into the call system 30 seconds late meant I had actually turned the computer on, which was technically part of my job, about 4.5 minutes before my shift started, and I stayed late regularly to finish calls. The manager told me that the time to turn on the computer was not part of my job, and I had to be ready to make calls bang on 12. I contacted HR, and they reluctantly agreed that turning on the computer was one of our duties, and therefore we only needed to be in ready to press the power button at 12. New manager was not easily been though. He started buying the time we got to our desks, and then, as is always the case when relying on public transport, if you were a few seconds or minutes late, he'd send the email telling you to work the extra time at the end of your shift. I decided that I had had enough of this, and so I decided to work to rule. I stopped trying to get new clients after hitting my 10 for the day and would play on the internet unless getting an incoming call from someone responding to a voicemail. I wouldn't make any outgoing calls after hitting the daily target. I also decided that if I was on a call after 8 p.m., I would simply tell the potential client, "My shift has now finished," hang up, and turn the computer off. I did this for a week and encouraged others to do it. When the weekly stats hit my boss's desk, he realized we were about a third down in terms of clients secured compared to other weeks. He called us into a meeting with his head of department and lost it on us, asking why we were all lazy and not securing clients, screaming about us hanging up on clients. I just said, "You told us you wanted us to work as required by the contract, down to the second. That's all we're doing. Do you not like it?" A few weeks later, he was gone and a much more sensible manager moved in. Things went back to the way they were. I ended up staying at the firm for 7 years, although only in the call center for 9 months before moving on to case handling and then trial work. The form says you must inspect all donations. I will give all people and entities names that correspond with their function within this story. Years ago, I started a new job. I'm a biology professor, and this job was at a small, private college. Note, as this is important, and people sometimes confuse these terms, private is not the same as for-profit. Private just means that we aren't operated by the state. Like most colleges, we are nonprofit. This college is also located within easy driving distance of a branch of a large state university. One of the first things I do is get us some free stuff. We have a lot of out-of-date equipment, analog when everyone has moved to digital, and a lot less glassware, beakers, etc. than we need. Some of my grad school buddies work at large state university nearby, so I call them up and ask if anyone is clearing out their lab. See, at a lot of these universities, when faculty leave or retire, anything left in their lab that isn't cutting edge and super expensive goes into state surplus. There are only 2 legal ways that I know of to avoid sending them to surplus: move it to someone else in the department or donate it to a nonprofit. It turns out that I actually know the person who all of this equipment goes to after being picked over in-house to be surplused, and so she lets me come by her storage space and pick through it next. Great story, right? I solve a problem for us, and large state university saves time and looks generous. Of course, that's not the end of this, or it wouldn't belong here. It turns out that I'm unaware of 2 things. First, by doing this, I have just made someone senior to me, but not in my command chain, look incompetent. This isn't hard, since that's the truth. Second, one of the reasons we seem not to have replaced things in a while is that there were, several years before I came, some major financial shenanigans. The sort where senior people resign, effective immediately, and the locks on their office doors get changed overnight. Because of the second point, paperwork has been created to document all sorts of transactions around the college. I don't know that this is helpful paperwork, since the sorts of transactions I'm about to describe weren't part of the financial shenanigans. But as we know from thermodynamics, once useful work is converted into paperwork, it can never be converted back into useful work again. Needless to say, Senior Professor complains to my department chair that I haven't filled out the donation paperwork, and so I'm violating our financial transparency obligations. I'm basically just Satan, etc. It probably doesn't help that Senior Professor also has the sort of attitude towards paperwork that leads me to suspect that instead of pets, she just has stacks of compliance forms lying around her house. My department chair, the person who could actually fire me, gives me the forms and asks that I fill them out appropriately. One item on this form is an estimate of the financial size of the gift. Obviously, if you're donating a few $1,000s to the university, which is probably what the form is actually for, you just write down the amount. For physical items, you need to estimate their value. I have a box of random equipment. I know more are coming, and I don't want to waste time looking up every piece of equipment, writing the price down, calculating some sort of reasonable discount because it's used items, and putting the full, itemized list in the space available, which is about this large. Still not the real malicious compliance here, but I duck this one. I didn't donate anything, I say. My chair is confused. But you came in with this box of glassware and told everyone in the department to come get what they needed from it. Me. Right, but that's a donation from large state university to our college, not to me. I just drove it here out of the goodness of my heart. If they donated it to me personally, that would be illegal, since they're required to donate it to a nonprofit. My chair, who came from industry and has a bit more business sense than some pure researchers, understands that this is correct. However, I can see that there is a problem coming. The next set of things I want to get are some decent animal skulls. We have about 3 species on hand, one of them human. Everywhere else I've taught, we generally have at least a dozen species on hand, and it's very useful when you are teaching anything that involves comparative anatomy. But my plan has been to use my own skills to clean the skulls of road-killed animals. That will be a donation from me every time, and I don't want to do this paperwork. It's now Christmas, and I'm visiting with some of my wife's friends back home. They're reminded that I'm a biologist and walk me out into the woods where they show me a deer skull. It's been there for years. We never had a use for it. It's yours if you want it. It's a doe. No antlers, which is what most people want, but for scientific purposes, that's fine. And we don't have one at work. I take it. Several weeks later, all of the relevant parties are back on campus. I wrap up the skull in a plastic grocery bag and take it in to donate. A note about old skulls, in case for some reason you don't have a career where you need to age skeletal elements by looking at them. Mammal skulls are made from many separate bones that fuse together at the edges. As a skull ages outside in the elements, many of these sutures open. This means that a skull that has been sitting outside for long enough is extremely dirty. The dirt is just dirt, since maggots and other flesh-eating insects pick every scrap of flesh away. But an item full of crevices sitting on dirt, with leaves falling on it, picks up a lot of debris. If you don't know anything about old skulls, you, rather naturally, assume that this debris is rotting flesh. The bag is there to contain this dirt. I need the donation form, I tell our administrative assistant. She gives me the form. I walk back to my office, and I carefully fill it out. Where it says value of donation, I fill in $0. This is important. I technically don't need to fill out this paperwork if the item is worthless, but I need to fill out the paperwork because I need to present the paperwork and the item to our financial department so that they can verify the item is worthless and that I didn't need to do the paperwork. A brilliant, well-designed system, as you can see. I ask our administrative assistant where the financial office is, since I'm still new enough that I don't really know. She tells me where, but says she has to go to that building anyway, and she'd be happy to take the paperwork and item with her. I say thanks, but no thanks. I'm taking it over now. I walk into the financial office. Everyone has a fancy nameplate, a desk with neatly marked trays for incoming and outgoing forms, and everyone seems to be dressed like someone had said, dress like you handle money all day, but actually buy everything from Walmart. Thankfully, the nameplates include job titles, so I walk over to the person who needs to validate my claims. What's this about? She asks. I have this donation for the biology department, and I've been told I need to fill out this paperwork and that you need to see the item. That's correct, she says, taking the paperwork from me. She starts to read, frowning like she might be able to accuse me of fraud. It's quite possible that, contrary to her parents' instructions, she made that face for so long that it has frozen this way. And this is the item, I say, reaching into a ratty plastic bag and pulling out the skull. The nose pointed towards her is a gaping hole with thin bones called turbinates winding back into the recesses of the skull. There's also a leaf wedged into the nose somehow out in the woods. A chunk of dirt drops from the inside of the brain case and falls to the floor. What is that? She says, clearly thrown off her routine. I have learned that most people find that most mammal skulls look the same, even though to me they look very different. A deer skull, I say. It was found in the woods by friends of mine. Here, take a look. I helpfully extend the skull towards her. A trickle of debris loosens itself from the back of the eye socket and rattles off the papers on her desk. I can see her cringe. I've assessed its value at $0, but I was told that you needed to personally inspect items to make sure of this. I turn the skull over in my hands as I say this, still holding it out in presentation mode, as if I thought that she couldn't properly assess its value without examining the strange brown stain on the bone that once formed the roof of the mouth. "I agree with that assessment," she says quite rapidly. At this point, I relent slightly and pull the skull back towards my chest so it is no longer extended over her desk. I casually fish a partial leaf from a suture in the top surface of the skull and drop it in the plastic bag I brought. "I have a few more of these coming," I mention. "I'll be cleaning those myself, so they'll be in better shape. Possibly more organic material left on them, though. Will you be needing to see those as well?" "No," she says, quite definitively. "So, just to get this straight, you, as a representative of our financial office, are telling me that all donations of such biological specimens are worth $0 and that you do not want to see them or the accompanying paperwork?" "Yes," she says. I stick the skull back into its traveling bag and, as a gesture of goodwill, sweep some debris off her desk and into the bag as well. It's a deal. Karen threatens to sue a bakery over a cake. Today was my aunt's birthday, so it reminded me of something funny that happened 2 years ago. First, a little bit of context. My aunt really likes cakes, but her favorite ones are from a bakery chain that only has 2 stores in our city, both of which open at 10 a.m. from Monday to Saturday and at 11 a.m. on Sundays. This story took place on a Sunday. Now, the place normally sells cakes of 1 or 2 kilograms each, but if you want a cake of 3 kilograms or more, you have to make your order within 1 day of anticipation and can pick it up as soon as the bakery opens. Now, as my aunt's party was mostly going to be a small reunion with just our closest family present, my mom decided to just buy a 2-kilogram cake since it's easier, especially because the bakery isn't exactly near our house and you can't just call to have your cake made. You have to go to the store and leave 50% of the money. So that day we arrived a few minutes before the opening hour and stood there waiting for the employees to open up the doors. The place had some pretty large windows too, meaning you could look inside and see the employees cleaning the place, bringing the cakes from the back and into the fridges and such. It was then that the devil herself arrived. A typical Karen with blonde hair, expensive-looking clothing, lots of makeup, 2 mini monsters, aka kids, and that "I'm better than everyone else" attitude. She tried pushing the doors open despite the sign that read "closed," and me and my mom standing there, quite obviously waiting for the place to open. More so, it wasn't even 11 a.m. yet, but still, she huffed and shook her head in exasperation as if the door had somehow wronged her. "Ugh, I can't believe they haven't opened yet," she complained loudly, looking at us as if we were going to agree with her. We just stared at her like she was crazy. "It is very disrespectful to keep us here waiting. I can't believe this lack of professionalism." My mom just nodded her head, and we both proceeded to ignore her until the clock struck 11, at which point she started pretty much banging on the door and demanding loudly that someone open the store, saying she would sue them and have their jobs and whatever. I had to turn around so she couldn't see me trying to contain my laughter. It was such a funny sight, seeing a full-grown adult throwing up a tantrum just because a bakery hadn't opened exactly at 11 a.m. I actually suspect that this made the employees not want to open, since it took them about 5 more minutes to let us inside. And of course, the Karen went full, "I want to speak to your manager," as soon as she stepped inside. Meanwhile, my mom and I went to look at the cakes, trying to decide which one we'd buy, but we couldn't help overhearing her. "This is such a huge disrespect," she was screeching to the poor manager. "Do you even know who I am? I work for a law firm, and I can't be wasting time here waiting for your lazy staff to open. I'll sue you." I really don't know what she was trying to accomplish with this huge tantrum, because as soon as the manager offered to give her a discount, she was like, "No, forget it. I won't be buying anything from you ever again." And with that, she grabbed her kids and stormed out of the store, but not without stopping at the door and looking to my mom, saying, "You can have this stupid cake." Turns out, her cake was not only a 3-kilogram cake, but it was made of blackberries instead of strawberries, like the normal cakes, which made it more expensive. But coincidentally, it was also my aunt's favorite. And not only that, Karen had already paid for half of it. My mom and I just looked at each other, smirked, and brought the cake to the counter. And the employee was very happy to sell it to us. Guess some good things can come out from encountering a Karen in the wild. Am I the jerk for choosing my son's now ex-girlfriend over him? Everything is a gigantic mess right now, and I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I have a son named Will who's 22. His mother and I split when he was 4 and we shared custody. For over a year, Will has been going out with his girlfriend, Elise, who's 19, and they moved in together 5 months ago. She's a very sweet and respectful girl, and I thought they made a nice couple. Well, almost 2 months ago, I heard from my ex-wife that Will kicked Elise out after he found out she was pregnant. I didn't want to believe that was the only reason and called Will. He explained to me that Elise told him she was pregnant and he was furious with her because she wanted to keep it. He said he wants nothing to do with her or the baby and he's not going to pay a cent. I was appalled by his attitude about all of this and reminded him that it takes 2 to make a baby and he needs to own up to his actions. Will said it was all Elise's fault for not wanting to get rid of the baby. He was far too upset and I felt myself getting angry too. I told him I'd call again when he's calmed down. I reached out to Elise and she was a mess. The poor girl was terrified. She said she didn't expect Will to react this way. I found out she was forced to stay at a friend's house because her parents are also refusing to let her move back because she shamed them. I talked with my wife and we agreed to have Elise come live with us in our spare bedroom. I've spoken to Will many times and he's still adamant about not being involved or at the very least helping out financially because he doesn't want to be a dad or to ruin his life. Our last talk, I got so furious with him, I said if he doesn't want to accept any responsibility for his child, then I will do the same and have nothing to do with him. My ex-wife called me because Will complained I was siding with Elise over him and said I don't have to cut contact with him over this. We had our own fight, but I refused to budge. It's been a few weeks like this now without any contact. Will has tried calling me several times and left many angry voicemails and texts saying I betrayed him. I had to block him. It just breaks my heart, and I'm wondering where exactly we went wrong as parents. Where I went wrong. I really thought we raised him better than this and taught him that in life, it's always important to take responsibility for your actions, and now he's completely running away from them. My ex is very angry with me for turning my back on him, even if she doesn't agree with what he's doing either. My wife and I decided we would help Elise with the baby and all other expenses, and that she's free to stay with us as long as she needs to. But this whole thing with Will, I don't know if it was a bad move as a father or not, or if I'm being a jerk. I guess that's what I'm here to ask. Karen demands her caviar and goes on to completely lose it at my store. This is a story from 2015, back when I was a meat manager. I was recently reminded of this incident while explaining a similar topic to a fellow customer. As any person in a retail position knows, the crazies come out near the holidays. Those customers that can't be reasoned with no matter how much proof you show them. This is one of those stories. A bit of info. In my own time, I'll cut up wild game, deer, elk, fish, in exchange for a share of meat. So I have a few game wardens on speed dial to make sure that everything is legal, pertinent to the story. Around Christmas of 2015, I was preparing prime roast orders for the holidays as I basically had the past few days when my meat clerk said a customer was looking for a form of caviar that he hadn't heard of before. I went out to see what help I could offer. We've got entitled mom, tall, blonde, 40-ish, Karen cut shoulder-length hair, 2 kids, rude from the start. Oh, good. Perhaps you can help me. This employee has no idea what he's doing. Me. Yes, miss. What kind of caviar are you looking for? Entitled mom. I'm looking for beluga, sturgeon caviar from the Caspian Sea. I bought it here a few years ago, and it was amazing. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. Me. Ma'am, I'm sorry. You must be mistaken. We have never carried beluga caviar. Last I heard, beluga caviar has been banned in the USA since 2005. There was a hybrid farm certified in Florida in 2016. Entitled Kid 1, full volume. Mom, look at the fish. Now sticking his fingers against the glass case. Entitled Mom. Shh, can't you see I'm talking? Back to her full volume. That's impossible. I picked it up here a few years back for $100. You can't BS me. Me. Ma'am, please keep your voice down and refrain from using harsh language. This is a family-friendly store. Ma'am, when beluga caviar was last sold in 2005, it was $400 to $600 an ounce. Once again, we have never sold beluga caviar. Perhaps it was a different sturgeon caviar. We have some that are at the $100 price range. Karen, I don't believe this BS. I know what I bought. My husband is on the city council, and I'm going to tell him about this and get you shut down. Me. At this point, I walked away to call security. She had left when I had gotten back. I didn't think much of it afterwards, just another crazy customer. A few weeks later, the same Karen came back, but this time to gloat. Karen, I came to show you that we were able to get it. The price was ridiculous, but we have photos showing it is the real deal. She had photos of not only the fish that was caught for the eggs, but video of 3 men catching it, the weight, cost, shipping ticket, proof, and pictures of them eating it. She was also here to place an order for a roast. I asked the clerk to get the order. Ask for an address under the premises of it being over a $200 order. I went to the back and called the game warden, Fish and Wildlife. I reported to the store manager what I had been shown and had the approval to report it. Game warden came in asking for the entitled mom's info, and it was freely given. I heard from the same game warden a few months later when calling about a few Chinook salmon a man had brought in. Entitled mom was given a search warrant and was found to have illegal beluga caviar in their freezer. After lab tests, I'd guess. I was told that they were given a fine of $1,200 for the caviar, but still had a pending trial that could charge them up to $25,000 and jail time for their actions that led to the death of an endangered species, international shipping of illegal goods, and a few others I don't quite remember. I offered to be a witness, but as they had the pictures, product, and messages between the sellers and entitled mom and entitled dad, they had plenty of evidence for a conviction. I wasn't given any info on the results of the trial afterwards. If I could remember her name, I'd try looking it up since it's likely public record. Edit. I forgot to mention, entitled dad did work in the city council, but not as a seat or such. He is, or was, a manager in the public works area, wastewater. I can't imagine that he was able to keep that job as the government/city higher-ups don't generally have a large criminal background. Edit 2. I'm glad everyone learned about the beluga sturgeon. I honestly feel bad for the kids that have parents such as these. I always wonder how the kids are doing after one of the parents ends up in law trouble. Have you ever tried caviar? If not, would you like to? Please let us know. I'd prefer some McDonald's, but hey, to each their own. Boss likes to see me beg? Enjoy seeing your money every day, but not being able to use it. So a bit of background first. I joined a bank, and after a few months, we had a management change in the division. The new division head brought some of the guys from his previous bank. Usually that's how it works in banks in my country. But the thing was that he treated the old team members like crap, and his boys were spending time surfing the net and presenting others' work to the management as their own. The issues. 1. I had an incredible workload, which made me to work 3 to 3.5 hours overtime daily without overtime pay. 2. My first year with the new boss, I got 0 increment, while his boys who joined in the last 6 months all got promotions. 3. The boss was petty and had a god complex. His boys would do apple polishing all day. 4. Gave no days off when I had the flu. 5. He and his boys would make sure everyone laughed and made fun of any tiny mistakes that happened in my work. As I had a huge workload, I did make a few small mistakes, but nothing that caused any loss. 6. They knew I got married and had a baby on the way, so I couldn't resign. So they went as far as making fun of my personal issues right in front of me. 7. They were simply a gang of jerks. So this goes on for like a good 1.5 years until I get a substantial offer from a better bank. It was a unique department, and we have less than 10 banks in my country, so other opportunities were hard to come by. So one fine 1st of January, I got the offer letter for the new job and decided to resign. That same day, my yearly performance review was done. As expected, it was a crappy one, since I was doing nothing important. So I decided to resign in protest of the bad performance review. Now, it's important to know the law in my country to switch banks. In order to join another bank from a new bank, you need to have a release letter from your previous bank. And in order to get your pay from your new bank, you need an NOC, no objection certificate, from your previous bank. Normally, the banks give an NOC a month after your last working day. It's done to see if you have any things hiding in your desk that might be fraud of stealing money. Yes, that happens a lot. That way, you can be forced to come back to your previous employer to settle the irregularities. Also, legally, you have to give a 3 months notice period, but in practice, a month is given and the next 2 months are waived, depending on how senior your position is. Mine was not. So here's the boss' final move. He says I have to do the whole 3 months because the work I was doing was very technical and needed longer to be learned by the guys in the team. But my last 2 yearly performance reviews said I was not doing anything important. Also, I had a staff loan that had an outstanding amount of just 20% of my basic salary. So my manager told me because of the policy, which I missed in fine print in the HR manual, I would not be paid monthly salary, but at the end of my 3-month notice, I would be paid all my outstanding dues minus the loan amount, which was just peanuts. Now my pro-revenge ensues. Firstly, I had told my new employer that I would be joining after 3 months, and they agreed, so I was good on that. I had savings, so I could just wait out the 3 months, but it would be very difficult for me to manage. Suddenly, the boss and his boys started joking about me not getting pay and being a beggar. They would put their change coins on my workstation and tell me it's charity. So, they want to see me beg? They shall see me beg. I went to my boss, told him a story, and asked him for some cash, faked some tears as well. Did the same thing to each of his boys. Since they all had God complexes, seeing me beg for money stroked their egos, and they gave me cash to help me out since I was broke and had no money for my son's milk and diapers. It was done with a condition not to tell anyone, please. It took them 2 weeks to tell each other that I was begging for money from each of them, and they all gave it to me. Collectively, I had borrowed 2 months of my salary from the boss and his boys. By this time, I had already done 1 month of notice period. So since it was just cash given by one person to another in a closed cabin room or outside the bank, there was no paper proof that I had borrowed money. Given the crappy law and order situation in my country, they couldn't recover the money from me anyway else. The boss smelled the revenge brewing, as he understood what I was doing. All of a sudden, he and his boys were nice to me. The jokes stopped, and they finally assigned 3 guys to take over my work. But my revenge had already started. I would come to the office around 11 a.m. and leave around 3 p.m. instead of the usual 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. hours. Suddenly, I had an amnesia attack and wasn't much help for the guys taking over my work. So they had to go through trial and error, which impacted operations and got them slack from management. My boss, realizing that since I owed them money, which they can't recover if I'm upset or fired, decided to let me leave the bank immediately. So the HR was told to release me on urgent basis. In their hurry, they made a fatal mistake. The next day, HR manager called me in, handed over my letter of release and NOC at the same time, along with all the money I was owed, Provident Fund, etc. In short, I was free to join the new bank and even get paid. So the previous bank cannot claim anything to me now. Plus, I had more than enough money in my account. So after the usual best of luck and all the best on my final day at work, the manager said, "You owe X amount of money to me and the boys. It would be nice if you could transfer that amount to his account and he will distribute it with the boys." My reply was, "What money?" I proceeded to join the new bank and lived happily ever after. I got a lot of calls and threats from the boss and his boys, but forget them. As extra rubbing, I kept the amount I owed them in my account in the same bank. So every morning they would come to work, pull up my account balance, see their money sitting there, give a few bad words to me, and carry on with their work. It's been 6 years now. The money is still there, and I made sure the account is still active. Have you ever had a boss treat you unfairly? If so, what were they doing? Please let us know.
You treat me unfairly, Mr. Reddit. You never let me read the stories, even though our listeners would love it.
Am I the jerk for telling an employee that pregnancy is not an excuse for low productivity? I work in an office. Due to the nature of our work and our employer, we are not working remotely right now, where I supervise a team of 3 people. The end of the year is our crunch time, and it means that my entire team is putting in more hours than normal, and everyone is expected to answer their phones and emails pretty much around the clock. Christmas except, of course. Most of my team is doing great, except for one woman I'll call Kara. Kara told me 2 weeks ago that she is pregnant and she is about 10 weeks along. The only reason she told me in the first place was because I had to write her up for not being as available as she needed to be. She was calling in sick at least once a week for the past 4 weeks, and when she was at the office, she was not 100% focused on her work. She explained that she has severe morning sickness and that she's been vomiting multiple times per day, and some days she needed to take off. I agreed to work with her and told her that she can come in later and stay later if she needs to get around the morning sickness, but she apparently is sick all day. I made other concessions too. I am allowing time off for doctor's appointments and allowing her to take more frequent breaks throughout the day. Apparently, she can no longer eat a regular lunch and must eat multiple times during the day. This all seemed perfectly reasonable to me as long as she held up her part of the bargain and maintained her productivity during this stressful time. Well, she has not. She has called out sick once already since then, and she has not made herself available for calls during off hours. My other staff is staying at the office until 8 or 9 in the evening, but Kara is out by 6 and apparently goes straight to sleep when she gets home and keeps her phone muted during that time. We have had to scramble to cover for her. Her work quality has also suffered, as apparently she has difficulty concentrating due to headaches and won't take anything for them. I sat her down yesterday and relayed my concerns. She acknowledged how her lack of productivity has hurt the rest of the staff, but claimed that she is physically struggling a great deal. I told her that was no excuse, because she is only in her first trimester and barely even pregnant yet. I also questioned whether it was fair to other women that she was using a normal bodily function as an excuse for low productivity. She said she understood and would try to do better. I told my wife about it, and she called me a jerk, saying that I have no idea how hard pregnancy can be. I just think it is unfair for an entire staff to pick up someone's slack because they made a personal decision to become pregnant. So, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. You want the house? Okay, good luck with the renovations. This happened in year 2015. My grandmother on my father's side passed in 2007, bless her soul. She owned a house and a lot, a bungalow type near the sea. This house wasn't paid in full, and there's still a remaining balance of $5,200 US. This is already big money for us. Because my father is the only son, his older sisters agreed he should get the house. There was no will, but he should pay the remaining balance. We lived there and renovated the house. My father did almost 75% of the work. He added 2 bathrooms, a ceiling, furniture, another bathroom, tiled the floors, kitchen sink, and septic tank. No drainage system on that location. Basically, we received the house in bare shape. We paid it off in 2015, but we didn't receive the title. There were so many excuses. 2016 comes. His nephew, a retired commander, visited my parents and told my father that he wants to add a second floor so he and his wife could live there also. My father didn't agree, and he called his older sister to see if they would want that to happen. They just said that they didn't want to get involved. His nephew showed him that he already had the title of the house. Don't know how he got it. Maybe he used his political background. I'm not sure. My father was furious. He called me and told me what happened. By that time, I had already bought a small patch of land for them when they want to retire, but I'm still saving enough money to build a house suitable for their needs. There were court battles that I will not include, but in the end, his nephew won. But there was an agreement that he has to pay my father $7,400. He mailed us the contract that we need to vacate the house after 6 months, and there were specific demands that our lawyer pointed out. A. We should repaint the house, no specific color. B. Leave the house in original state. Guess what? We hired a construction team to demolish the bedroom, the bathroom, remove the ceiling, kitchen sink, tiled floor, and also the septic tank, leaving it in its original state. We spent about $2,800, including the labor. The cherry on top, we painted the house with black inside and red outside with violet dots. It was a huge eyesore. I was bombarded with lots of calls and messages from my aunts and cousin, which I didn't reply to. We went no contact after that. My parents now live in a beautiful farmhouse tending their small garden. They enjoy morning walks by the lake, just living in a stress-free environment. They are planning to adopt a puppy next month. Edit. We got our money back because we have receipts proving we paid the remaining balance. Am I the jerk for ruining Christmas by kicking out my daughter-in-law for humiliating me? I have 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. I get along really well with 2 of their spouses. Patrick is a little different. He has always been asocial and introverted and could be mean to his sister, making fun of her and putting her and her interests down. Patrick met daughter-in-law 15 years ago. They got married 8 years ago. Daughter-in-law is the one I struggle with. I've tried to be as inviting and warm and loving to her as all the other spouses. She's also mean to my daughter. She makes fun of her and even refers to daughter as a beard because daughter's spouse is effeminate. Sorry if this is confusing. This year, when baking cookies with my daughter and daughter-in-law told me to not get Patrick any gifts because he doesn't want any. He hates getting gifts. I've always known Patrick wasn't much for gifts, so we'd go very simple and practical, thinking of things we could upgrade for him. Pots and pans, power tools, etc. But daughter-in-law was very insistent about it this year. He was always appreciative and admitted he could use them, but she insisted, so I didn't get Patrick anything. When we opened presents this year, everyone was laughing and having fun. When we got to the end and daughter-in-law turns and looks at me and says, "Where's Patrick's present?" I said, "You told me not to get him anything, remember?" She said,
No, I didn't.
my daughter says, yeah, you did. I was there. Daughter-in-law then laughs and says,
You guys must be off your meds again.
daughter and I both manage mental health issues, so this was an example of daughter-in-law's mean streak. I was so humiliated and upset by her little comment that I just snapped. I told daughter-in-law and Patrick to leave and to not bother coming by again until daughter-in-law can learn how to be a good daughter-in-law, and told Patrick that the way he allows her to trash the members of our family is just unacceptable. Daughter is on my side, but Christmas was awkward after that, and my husband and other son told me that I overreacted and that it's just her sense of humor, and that I should be used to it by now. Used to what? Being disrespected and mocked in my own home? But I don't know if my actions were too over the top or not. I know I ruined Christmas for them, but what about me? What about my Christmas? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter-in-law? Please let us know.
I wouldn't allow that little jerk back into my home.
You only get paid for 37 hours work. Okay, I'll only stay for that long. So I worked as an executive pastry chef for a medium-sized hotel here in England where we catered mainly to weddings on weekends, but had a successful restaurant that ran alongside it doing 2/3 rosette quality food, about 60 covers a night. Well, as anybody who has worked in catering may know, it's not uncommon to work a tremendous amount of hours in a week on a consistent basis. Here I was working about 75 to 80-ish hours a week, 5 days of about 14 to 15 hours, then an extra 5 or 6 or so on my day off. Now it's important to know that we did not get paid for overtime here as chefs. You worked all of these hours and you got paid for 37.5 hours. That's 40 hours in work where they took 30 minutes off for 5 days for a lunch break that you never even had. You do all this and life sucks doing it. But it's a job and it's not easy in catering at the best of times. So the straw that broke the camel's back comes when I get pulled by the finance manager because I left on one of those days after 5 hours. You see, they ran their weeks Thursday through Wednesday for pay and rota, etc. I left on a Thursday to go look after a family member on my day off that I'd already gone into work to help out on. But because it was a Thursday and the start of the week, I hadn't done enough hours in that week to justify leaving early. My explaining was that it was 1, my day off really, 2, I had worked 45 hours between Monday through Wednesday, and 3, I didn't get paid for any extra work. Didn't seem to help. They got annoyed and said, "You get paid for 37.5 hours, no more. If you can't do your work in that time, then that's your problem, but you get paid no extra." Well, that played right into my hands. See, I mentioned above they had weddings at weekends. Well, that played right into my hands. See, I mentioned above that they had weddings on weekends and a busy restaurant that we used to have to service at the same time. If that sounds stupid and almost impossible, that's because it was. Well, the Saturday the following week was a big weekend for them. Bank holiday, big wedding, full restaurant, etc. So me and 2 of the other chefs decided we would work the 37.5 paid hours, then leave. So we worked Thursday and Friday, racking up 31 paid hours there. Then Saturday, we all had the full day shift, breakfast through till close. So we started at 6 a.m. and then 2 p.m. rolls around. Well, that's our 8 paid hours, so we left. We just simply downed tools, got changed and walked out. Left the kitchen as it was, left the food prep where it was, didn't finish prepping for the night. We did nothing. 5 minutes later, I get a very angry call from the general manager who wanted me back there immediately to work the shift and finish the wedding, etc. Or they couldn't do it without me. I politely explained that I was told to only work my 37.5 hours or it wasn't my issue. So that's what I did. The night was a disaster by all accounts, and it cost the company thousands in compensation to the wedding party and in lost revenue for the restaurant. Never mind the reputational damage. Didn't go back into work until the following Thursday when my weekly hours started again. I got to keep my job. Not easy to replace a pastry chef of my skill who ran the kitchen for them most of the time. One of the others got sacked as he was easily replaced, and the other got his hours cut until he quit. Catering is not a nice place to work. They're real jerks. Ultimately, I left about 6 months later. I got fed up of working for free as it had just gone back to normal. Left being owed about 20,000 pounds of overtime that I never got. Company went bankrupt dodgily and destroyed all evidence of hours worked, employment records, etc. So we got done over. The same guy rebought the hotel under a new name, etc. So it's all very shady. Am I the jerk for refusing to drive my brother around anymore, therefore making my parents' lives way harder? I, 20, female, am living with my parents and my younger brother, who's 17. My parents and I generally get along well, but my brother is an absolutely awful person. He's always been very stubborn when we were younger, but in the last couple of years, his behavior has gotten way worse and extreme. Unfortunately, my parents are enabling him. My brother is part of the self-proclaimed popular kids at school, and he constantly looks down on anyone he doesn't think is cool enough for him. He often uses all kinds of names he shouldn't be calling people and makes offensive jokes around me and my mom. He and his friend group have often hung out during lockdown to drink together, and they even got caught by the police once. They got off with a warning. At home, his behavior continues. He always leaves messes for others to clean up. He listens to loud music and FaceTimes his friends while talking super loud until 4 a.m. nearly every night. Unfortunately, my parents never discipline him because whenever my parents even hint that his behavior is wrong, he freaks out. If my parents say he can't, for example, hang out with his friends because of the lockdown, he throws a huge temper tantrum and insults everybody until he gets his way. Since my brother isn't allowed to drive by himself yet, me and my parents have to drive him places all the time. A couple of days ago, he asked me if I could drive him to a supermarket because he needed to buy something. I was in a good mood, so I decided to drive him, and while my brother was in the supermarket, I stayed in the car and read a book. When my brother returned to the car and sat down next to me in the passenger seat, I asked him to hold my book while I'm driving. He said that he didn't feel like holding anything and carelessly threw my book in the back seat. I told him to get it back because when I have to brake, it'll fall down, and I wasn't able to get it because, well, I was driving. He refused, so at the next traffic light, I brake, the book falls down, and it now has a huge dent. I was seriously mad at my brother, and he just laughed condescendingly and told me I'm overreacting. At this point, all his crappy behavior over the years really hit me for some reason, and I decided for myself that enough is enough. I told my parents that from now on, I won't do my brother any favors anymore, and that includes driving him anywhere until he changes. My parents both work, so sometimes they rely on me to drive my brother somewhere, but I won't do that anymore. If he wants me to pick him up from school, he can take the bus. If he wants to meet his friends, he can walk or go by bike. My parents now say that I'm making their lives way harder, so now I'm conflicted. Am I the jerk for refusing to drive my brother around anymore? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is their brother? Please let us know.
Definitely the brother and the parents for letting him act like that. Entitled kids don't make themselves, you know.
Entitled shopper demands I pay for her stuff. This happened just an hour ago, and I'm laughing at the insanity and absurdity at this situation. So, as everyone is painfully aware, there's a little situation going on in the world, and we're on lockdown with the exception of going out for essential shopping. So, some backstory. My nan and I are close. She's the 5th member of our family. My dad, me, my brother, and my nan. And she's elderly, disabled, and asthmatic, so she's high risk and vulnerable. Now, I'm also severely asthmatic, and I probably shouldn't be going out shopping, but for my nan, I'm willing to risk it. So I go out to do her shopping at Morrison's. She gives me her shopping list, and I get what she needs / what's available. So this entitled shopper started off by ramming me with her trolley while I was waiting to scan my items and pay, and was invading my personal space. Very rude. So I begin placing my items on the till, and she's just glaring at me for some reason and muttering to herself about me hurrying up. I place the divider and go to start bagging my items. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had to rush for you. So as I'm bagging my items and about to pay, the cashier continues scanning strange items that I know I wasn't buying. I ask the cashier, "What's going on? Those aren't mine." And the cashier is confused, saying there's no divider. I look up, and this entitled jerk has removed the divider, and now her items were being scanned and added to my bill. I tell the cashier, and she starts to remove the items and sort the mistake. This is when entitled shopper goes insane.
Excuse me? What are you doing?
I'm confused and tell her that her items were accidentally being scanned and thinking that the divider must have been buried in the shopping and didn't think it was a big deal as the cashier was apologetic and sorted it.
You need to pay for my shopping.
I'm just shocked and simply say, "What?" She glares at me.
My items were being scanned on your shopping, so you have to pay for them. And since you're paying for some now, you must buy my whole shopping.
I give the cashier a look. and am absolutely gobsmacked. What makes you think I'm going to buy your shopping? She scoffs and continues on about how a few mistakes mean I have to pay. I pay for my items, and she still stood there expectantly waiting for me to pay for her shopping. I begin to walk away, and she screams for me to come back. People are now staring, so I turn and say, "Lady, I don't know you, and I don't have to buy your shopping for any reason." She then screams for security and feeds them some lie about me having to pay for her stuff. He called me over to ask what was happening, and I told him. She then went on admitting she removed the divider, thinking I wouldn't notice and I'd pay for her. Thankfully, the security guard just looked at her and told her the same thing I said, that I didn't have to. As I began walking away, she was screaming at the cashier, saying she didn't have any cash or cards on her to pay and was demanding her to honor some expired coupons. I left before anything else, so I don't know how it ended. So this lady thought she was entitled to her shopping and I had to pay for it, as she didn't have any way to pay for it. Honestly, how can you be so stupid to not bring a means of paying for groceries? I'm wondering if she had tried it before and whether it worked on other people. I ain't buying someone else's shopping for no good reason. Entitled parent breaks glass all over the floor at my work and blames it on me. Backstory. When I was 17, I got a part-time job for the summer working in a restaurant where my mother worked also. It was big enough, but it was all open planning, so you could see everything that was going on. This is important later. So I'm working one fine summer day, and in comes entitled parent and her two brat kids, who look to be about 8 and 10. I set them down with their menus and bring over a glass jug of ice water, as most restaurants do. As I set the jug down, her kids ask if they can have juice instead of water, and I tell them that unfortunately we are out of juice. We have dispensers in our wall that you can get the juice out of. Entitled parent calls BS to this and demands that I fill up the glass jug with juice. I then point to the empty dispensers and literally show her that we are out. At this point, her kids are screaming that they want juice, and I try to calmly tell them that we don't have any. Then entitled parent picks up the glass jug and just lets it drop to the ground, and it just shatters everywhere, then looks me in the eye and goes, "Can I speak to your manager?" However, the manager wasn't in that day, and when he's not in, my mother is in charge. So my mother comes over and asked her what was wrong. An entitled parent goes hysterical, saying that I threatened her by shattering the glass jug when they asked for juice. She then says that she's going to press charges against me and she wants me fired. But as I said before, this restaurant was all open planning, and my mother had seen everything and knew that entitled parent was lying. I'm a tall girl, nearly 6'1", and I'm 17, so my mother wasn't exactly small either. I'd say maybe 5'11", which is pretty tall. So my mother literally bends down to entitled parent's height and puts on the voice that all mothers put on when someone messes with your kid and says, "I saw everything that happened, and I know that you're lying through your teeth, and you better leave before I press charges for putting my daughter at risk by shattering a glass at close proximity that could easily have hurt her. So help me God, if I decide that I want to press charges, let me tell you that you will never be able to show your face in a restaurant in this area again." My mother is pretty high up in the restaurant industry in my area, as she had been a chef in most of those restaurants. I swear, when entitled parent heard that I was the manager's daughter, her face turned so pale, I thought she was going to faint. She grabbed her kids and rushed out of the door, and thankfully, we haven't seen her since. Karen followed me at an airport because she thought I was a lost kid. This probably needs context before I start. Both my parents are divorced and live in 2 separate states. I live with my mom and grandparents in Nashville, Tennessee, while over school breaks I visit my dad in Rochester, New York. I've flown alone since I was 5, and when I turned 13, my parents said it was okay if I travel without an escort on my layovers, as long as I text them when I'm boarding and when I land. Fair enough. This happened when I was 16. Now, I don't look my age and never have. There's a bad combination in my family, short jeans and a baby face. I was lucky enough to inherit both. To give you a rough image, I'm a 5-foot tall girl who weighs barely over 125 pounds with a baby face. Easy for people to mistake me as younger than I am. Well, flying was always the worst offense because I was alone. I also have bad anxiety and stutter a lot when I'm nervous, so it only adds to the age confusion more. I was coming back from New York and had a 2-hour layover in Baltimore. I decided to get some food at Chipotle. While I was eating at the food court, minding my own business and scrolling through my phone, this middle-aged, white, blonde woman with her 2 kids walks up to me. We'll just call her Karen. Karen.
Hi, honey. Are you okay?
Me. Yes. Why ask?
Well, you seem young and you're by yourself.
Oh, great. Here we go again. This wasn't the first time this happened, so I calmly told her that I was fine and thanks for the concern. Well, apparently, Karen didn't like my answer. Her tone soon changed from a caring, concerned citizen to a demanding jerk. She told me I wasn't fine because I was a minor by myself and needed adult supervision to fly. She was correct about the minor part, but the supervision part was BS. I was flying Southwest, who allows anyone 12 and older to travel by themselves, but someone is still supervising you on the flight until you're 15. I did not need adult supervision to be in the airport past security alone, and I told her this. I politely asked her to leave me alone, and I understand the confusion. Karen was not having it.
You're lying.
Me. How?
I have kids, and I know the airport policy about minors.
Me. Clearly you don't. I've already said I'm fine. Can you please leave me alone?
No. Where are your parents?
Me. Doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. I need to complain to them.
At this point, I was getting annoyed. I didn't want to tell her about the fact that my parents were divorced, but back then I saw it as the only way for her to fully understand the situation and leave me alone. Me. Ma'am, I'm 16 years old. My mom is in Nashville waiting for me, and my dad is in New York. Neither of them are in this airport, and they both know I'm by myself and are okay with it. I'm allowed to have a layover by myself, and I'm not considered an unaccompanied minor when I'm 16 years old, according to the airline. Now please, leave me alone. Karen.
No, you're lying.
Me. How am I lying?
I know you're lying because I have kids. I know how rebellious they are, and you are definitely not 16 years old.
I was getting mad at this point. For one, what right do you have to tell me how old I am? And secondly, your kids look 7 and 5, a little too young to be going through a teenage rebellion. I stood up, put my food in my bag, and told her, I think I know how old I am.
Where's your proof?
I took out my driver's license. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have, but I was desperate for her to go away, with not only my birthday, but the fact I had one in the first place signified I was 16 years or older. I didn't want to show this lady my other information, so I let her see the birthday and nothing more. Karen wasn't going to swallow her pride and walk away. Karen.
That still doesn't excuse you from walking around the airport by yourself. How do I know you aren't running away from home?
I wanted to tell her that even if I was, it was none of her business. I repeated Southwest policy to her and told her that if she still didn't believe me, she could go on their website and check for herself or ask an employee. I then repeated for her to leave me alone or I'd get security. My bluff didn't seem to affect her. She said I wasn't going anywhere and I had to come with her and find my parents. I simply told her no and began reaching for my backpack. The Karen grabbed my wrist and started pulling me. I yanked my wrist away, grabbed my backpack, and started running. At this point, people were watching and her kids seemed distressed, but I didn't care. I made a run for my gate. Now, I'm not very athletic, but I'm definitely faster than this overweight single mom. I eventually made it to my gate and took a seat at one of the chairs. Still feeling uneasy, I told the lady at the gate what happened and that I was still shaken up. She understood and said if she saw a woman matching the description near the gate, she'd make sure she didn't come near me, and if she did, security would be alerted. Well, turns out my gut was right, and after about an hour, I saw her looking around the different gates. I told the lady and she nodded. She instructed me to get behind the desk as the Karen approached. Here's basically the conversation. Karen.
Excuse me? That kid behind you is not allowed to be in the airport by herself.
She turned to me and asked if I was an unaccompanied minor. I answered no. Worker. If she's not an unaccompanied minor, then she can be in the airport by herself. Karen.
She's lying. She can't be 16. She showed me a fake ID.
Worker. Oh, really? She turned to me and asked to see my boarding pass. I gladly handed it to her. She reviewed it and said it looked fine. She then asked to see what I showed the Karen. I handed her my driver's license and she also said it looked fine. Karen demanded that the woman at the desk hand me over to her so she could take me to her gate and find my parents. This scared me. I knew I wasn't going anywhere with this woman, but it didn't stop me from being scared. Worker. Ma'am, is this girl your kid? Karen.
No.
Worker. Then I'm afraid I cannot give her to you. I can assure you she's in good hands.
No, she's not, because she's rebellious and lying. I'm clearly more qualified to take care of her, considering I have kids and you don't.
That did it. At this point, I could feel a panic attack coming on. The nice woman must have noticed this. She told the Karen that either she goes to her gate and leaves me alone, or security will be called. Karen huffed and puffed, saying the front desk lady didn't know her own airline policies and she'll be calling 911 for endangerment, and Southwest was going to get shut down for this. The lady at the desk only nodded. After Karen was done with her rant, she walked away before security could come. Before she left, the lady asked her name so she could file a complaint for her, an obvious lie, and she told her, "We'll just keep her name as Karen." The lady at the desk offered to find her gate, informed them of what happened, and made sure she didn't leave her gate to make me feel safer. I agreed, and we found out her gate was in the international terminal. Knowing this woman wanted to take me to a completely different terminal, the international terminal no less, made me even more scared, but I was assured everything was going to be alright. Her gate was informed about the situation, and they said that they would make sure she wouldn't leave the terminal once she arrived. It made me feel a lot better. I'm 19 now and still haven't grown taller. I'm in college now and still fly by myself. I'm still a little shaken up from the whole thing, but I still fly on my own, but I make sure to carry around my ID and passport, and if anyone asks if I needed help, I'll quickly answer no and walk away. That may make me look more suspicious, but I don't care. I'd rather come across rude than have to deal with another crazy Karen. Man, this post was long. Thanks for reading all the way if you did. Have you ever seen anyone acting crazy at an airport? If so, what were they doing? Please let us know.
Airports are actually one of my favorite places to freak out at.
Am I the jerk for kicking out my girlfriend on New Year's Eve? We can all agree that 2020 was a bad year, particularly for my 29 male family. We lost our dad beginning of the year after he had a heart attack, and my little brother, 12, had no one to take care of him. Our mom passed when he was 3, so our dad was all we had left. I fought for custody and was appointed his legal guardian. Honestly, it hasn't been easy. We're still adjusting to these life changes, and my brother is taking it the hardest. For months, he was just not himself. Bad attitude, lashing out. I got him in therapy because I knew he was just hurting, plus stress of lockdown. His behavior has improved so much since then, even if sometimes there's days where he's withdrawn. Days before Christmas, he was feeling sad since it was our first holiday without Dad. That day, he asked to be left alone. We had a talk to discuss his feelings, and I gave him the space after that. My girlfriend was over that day, and I went out to buy groceries. When I got back, my brother was out of his room and helping out. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Yesterday, my brother and I were out having some guy time before going back home to get ready for New Year's Eve. My brother opened up about how grateful he is for everything, and he hopes that I don't change my mind about taking care of him. I asked why he'd think that, and he told me what happened. That day, when I was out, my girlfriend went to his room to tell him he needs to change his attitude and stop moping, her exact words, because he should be grateful I'm taking care of him at all, and that we can still hand him over to the state if we wanted to. I was furious about this and had to reassure him that was never going to happen because he really was worried about it. We went home, I confronted my girlfriend, and she didn't deny it. She told me it's true, and there was nothing wrong with telling him to stop acting like that when he should be grateful I gave up my life to take care of him. And the thing about giving him up isn't that big of a deal to her because it's not like I'll actually do it. I said she still scared him with that threat and told her to leave my apartment because honestly, I was far too mad and because I didn't want her to be near him right now. She started crying. There was more fighting, but she left in the end. It was just me and my brother for New Year's. Since last night, I've been bombarded with calls from all our friends for kicking her out, knowing she has no family and nobody else to spend the holiday with. Everyone has sided with her, and even my best friend says I may have overreacted by making her leave when she probably thought she was helping. They've heard my side of the story, but still think I was the jerk for making her cry and spending the new year alone. I'm having trouble seeing how I could be, so here I am looking for internet strangers to weigh in on this. Update. Okay, wow, this has gotten a ton of feedback. Thanks everyone for your kind and encouraging words. I might not have replied to a lot of the comments that made me smile, but just know that I read and appreciate them. I know I only posted this a few hours ago, but I've had a day to clear my head and really think about this. I talked to my brother because I wanted to know if she said anything else to him. Thankfully, she hasn't, and we had another serious chat to remind him everything she told him is completely false. I would never in a million years give him up, and that shouldn't have been put in his head. Another thing I told him was that I'm grateful he's here with me. Without him, I wouldn't have made it through the year, and I thanked him for giving me the strength to keep going. Someone who DM'd me suggested reassuring him that he's not somehow ruining my life in case he feels any guilt for what she told him. Thank you for that suggestion. Now, I know you are all waiting on this news. Yes, I did break up with her. Thinking about what a lot of you said, talking to my brother about how this made him feel, and my own thoughts about how badly she acted, I decided that's not someone I want to be around, me or him. I can't risk her doing something like this again and ruining any progress he makes in therapy. I know many of you think I should have done it on the spot, but I wanted to make this decision with a clear head and not when my emotions were extremely high. She came by my place earlier and we talked outside. Her reaction was as bad as you'd expect, and she still believed she did nothing wrong, even after I explained it all to her. There was just no making her understand, and I told her it was over. I gave her a couple of her things that were lying around my apartment, and she left. My phone started going off like an hour later, so I had to put it on Do Not Disturb. That's all the drama I could handle for one night. I'll deal with my friends some other time. Honestly, I'm exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained right now. I think this weekend we'll do something to get our minds off this. I definitely need it after everything, and I know my brother does too. It's been a hard year already without all this extra drama. Anyways, sorry for the long update, you guys, but I didn't want to leave anyone hanging. I'm sure more comments will keep coming. I probably won't be sleeping much tonight, so I'll keep my mind busy by reading and replying to more of you. Thanks again for the support. What a crappy way to start the new year, but here's hoping for better things. Well, what do you think? Was OP the jerk or was his girlfriend? Please let us know.
Perhaps she was the one who should have gotten the warning. Seriously though, you should never tell a kid something like that.
Insane Karen loses it at my restaurant. I worked for close to 15 years at a small restaurant in my hometown. Mostly I did takeout and rang customers out. We are cash only, and most people in the area know that. This took place in 2013. So one day a woman approaches the counter. She tells me, rather rudely, that she's paying and throws the receipt at me. I bring up her bill and tell her the amount, and she hands me a Visa. I tell her cash only, and she stands there with the Visa. I tell her again that we're cash only, and she says,
"Oh no, honey, you can take cards. I come here every week and always pay with a card."
I tell her again we are cash only, and she huffs and puffs, then digs through her wallet and hands me an American Express. I tell her again that we are cash only, and again, she tells me she's there all the time and always pays with cards. I tell her she has us mixed up and that there's an ATM in the lobby if she needs cash. The woman's face goes into this shocked expression, and she says to me,
"An ATM? Are you insinuating that I need money and that I'm poor?"
She storms out into the lobby to use the ATM after digging through her wallet to find cash. She stands at the ATM for a few minutes, then comes back in, telling me that she's not using a sketchy ATM because it's a bank she's never heard of, and it charges $3 for non-members. She then asks where a certain bank was in our area. It was a fairly large bank, but our town didn't have a branch, and I didn't know where there was a location around us. I tell her this, and she tells me I'm useless as an employee, and she'll recommend to my boss that he fire me. I tell her there's an ATM for Bank of America, not the bank she asked for, 5 minutes down the street. She thanks me and starts looking something up on her phone for a few minutes. She comes back up to the counter and tells me she's driving to the ATM. I tell her I need collateral from her, and she goes crazy, telling me I'm accusing her of being a thief. She then says that she'll leave her kid there as collateral. I tell her okay, thinking she's running to the ATM 5 minutes down the road. The girl takes a seat over in the corner at the front of the restaurant where we have a few chairs and a bench, and I go back to helping customers. I totally forgot about her until like an hour or so later when I realized she's still there. I'm a little worried because the Bank of America ATM is only 5 minutes away, but then I remember the mom asked about another bank. I quickly do a location search for it, and the nearest branch is 45 minutes away. So I'm assuming that's where the mom went to. I keep checking up on the girl, making sure she's okay and asking if she needs anything. I ask her if she knows her mom's phone number so I can call to check on her to see how much longer. She gives me her mom's number and I call. Mom picks up after a few rings and I introduce myself and ask how long she'll be. She tells me she went to the ATM and while she was out, she decided to run a few errands while her daughter wasn't with her, and that she appreciates us watching her daughter. I'm infuriated. I tell her we are not a babysitting service and I'm not watching her, as I have a job to do. She starts going ballistic, telling me that something could have happened with her daughter while she was in my care. I tell her that she has 10 minutes to get here or I'm calling the police. She showed up 9 minutes later, talking on the phone about how her babysitter bailed on her while she was in the middle of running errands, threw the money on the counter, grabbed her daughter, and stormed out. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have called the police on her or not? Please let us know.
Definitely. She's gonna be one of the worst mothers I've ever heard of.
I don't call him by his name either. Last night, my daughter came home from her job. She works retail in a nearby shopping plaza, with the sad news that their neighboring store, which specializes in kitchenware, is having a going out of business sale. It was tragic news in our home, as my wife and daughter both share a passion for baking and cooking and shop there often, so much so that the owner, my wife, and daughter are on a first-name basis. Ever since my daughter was little, she was mommy's helper in the kitchen. It's been a running gag in our house the past few years that we give her a 5-pound bag of flour among her Christmas presents. Now, 17, she enjoys flying solo in the kitchen, and her pierogies are food not to be eaten but experienced. My wife is feeling under the weather, so she gave me a list of things to look at, plus a surprise item, more later. I agreed to meet my daughter at the store when she finished work. My daughter had gotten there a little early, and I was a little late leaving the house, so she had already been in the store by the time I arrived. That's when the fun begins. Our cast: we've got sweetheart daughter, we've got obnoxious lady, and we've got nice store owner. I arrive at the store and find daughter chatting with the owner, commiserating over the store closing. Owner was feeling sad and appreciated daughter's sympathy, so I decided to shop for a bit and let them finish their conversation. I had barely made it 20 feet before I was overwhelmed by some of the choices. Nearby stood a middle-aged woman who, even with a mask, you could tell wore a perpetual scowl that curdled milk in a 5-mile radius. So I turned towards daughter and said, "Hey sweetheart, I have a question." Old lady:
Sweetheart, that's not how you address a woman.
At this point, daughter hears the kerfuffle and sprints over, knowing that the gene that allows one to suffer fools gladly is only present in my wife's DNA. Owner wasn't with her, apparently having just begun ringing someone up. Me. But she's old lady talking over me, raising her voice.
You jerk, she has a name.
Me. Yes, I know. I was going to point out I gave her that name, after my grandmother, but she continued raising her voice.
You address her politely as
Emphatically.
Miss, or use her name.
Daughter, now arriving, putting her hands up. Look, it's okay. Old lady turning to daughter.
No, it's not okay. You should not have to put up with
daughter raising her voice. It's okay. I don't call him by his name either. I call him Dad. It's obvious that the embarrassment is now further exacerbating old lady's rage, and were I not suffering fools gladly challenged, I'd have just let things go. But as I mentioned, I lack that gene. Me. This is the part where a reasonable person apologizes. Karen just glares at me, determined not to give me the satisfaction before turning and walking away. Me. Yeah, I knew our little exchange was one reasonable person short. Come on, with emphasis. Sweetheart. Let's finish, with emphasis, Mom's shopping list. We worked through the rest of the list, filling our basket and ferrying up the larger items to the counter. There are no shopping carts. Thankfully, Karen had gone by the time owner began ringing us up. Me to owner. Oh, I forgot one thing. This is where the aforementioned surprise comes in. I hurriedly returned with the deluxe KitchenAid stand mixer that elicited a puzzled look from my daughter, as we already have one. Turning to my daughter. This one's for you. Mom and I figured that someday when you have your own place, you'll have your first appliance. Cue misty eyes from my daughter. Owner gave us an extra $50 off, which was yet another nice surprise. Speaking of baking, what was the last thing you baked or cooked? Please let us know.
I made a quiche last night, and boy was it good.
Am I the jerk for telling a mom on my flight I did not think she handled her kids' tantrums well? I was forced to take a flight across the Atlantic for work, which by itself put me in a fairly sour mood. A mom flying with a toddler was seated across from me. The kid had a really hard time adjusting to the changing pressure and ended up crying nonstop from takeoff to landing, an 8-hour overnight flight. Needless to say, everyone in the vicinity was absolutely exhausted and got no sleep. My earplugs were barely any help. Kids got some healthy lungs. I kept my mouth shut throughout the flight because no one asked for my opinion, but I will admit I was judging the parent. It was clear this was a social visit. Midway through, the mom took the kid's new toys out and kept trying to distract the kid with Christmas presents from grandma. When we landed, another woman decided to pipe in and compliment the mom on her patience and handling the situation so well, which she as a mom herself understood because it's so hard to travel when they are so young. Not going to lie, I rolled my eyes so hard that even with the mask on, it was clear I was in disagreement. She asked me why I'm making the face, and I responded that since she asked, I, and probably most others, don't think the mom handled the situation well at all. We've all had almost no sleep. It's a hard enough flight to take without the new protocols and no sleep. I then asked why she had to bring our kid to Europe in the first place, which is probably not a good idea, even during a normal year when he's that young. Some shouting from the mom and her newfound friend ensued, but I just shook my head and took the first opportunity to head for the exit. I'm usually not snippy with people, but hours of nonstop screaming got under my skin. Am I the jerk? Edit. In case you're wondering, I had to make an in-person submission with a regulator in the US, which requires being physically present in the country. Thank you, American bureaucracy, unwavering even during these wonderful times. Edit 2. I'm having a blast talking to all the entitled parents here. A few things that I know will enrage you, but truth hurts, as you know. 1. Traveling with a small kid when you know A. The pressure changes will cause the kid significant discomfort, and B. You'll affect everyone around you is extremely selfish. It's intentionally hurting your kid and making others miserable, and it's 100% your choice that led to the situation. 2. People will judge you for your selfishness. If you feel ashamed of your kid being disruptive, good, you should be. 3. No one owes you special accommodations because you have a kid. It's your choice, live with it. Others are entitled to feeling unhappy about the consequences of your entitlement. 4. Toddlers have no business on a plane. They have no concept of death. So if your excuse is last chance of seeing someone, as folks have posted, leave the kid with the other parent or bring them with you. But then don't you dare complain others are unhappy with your choice. See number 3. With this, I'm peacing out as I know I'm heading for the front page and also a ban from the mods from arguing in the comments. Happy New Year to all You're the Jerks. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Oh, I can't wait to read the comments we get about this. Want me to move something without tying it down first? You sure? Okay then. Meet Bob. Bob is someone I know. Bob is a great guy. He has worked hard to support his family his whole life. I admire Bob because he can fix a lot of things on his cars, house, etc. He's almost entirely self-taught and has a lot of common sense despite not being book smart, which is why I was astounded that he had me do this. Bob can also be stubborn as heck and gets to be a real jerk when he is stubborn. Bob's wife found a beautiful roll-top desk at a yard sale. She had wanted one for years. Bob asked me to drive to the yard sale with my pickup. Sure thing, Bob. I don't mind helping you out a bit. Bob's wife was excited. Her eyes were gleaming. It was huge, really heavy, somewhere around 250 pounds, and old. It was also a very nice desk. So Bob and I and the seller get it manhandled into my pickup bed. I grab straps and Bob snaps at me. We don't have time for that. Let's get it back to the house. I know darn well it isn't going to hold still, and I tell him so. Yes, it will. It's a big, heavy desk. Drive really slowly with your hazards on. Now me, who actually paid attention to physics in high school, and you, dear readers, know where this is going. I protested. Let's lay it down or strap it. Bob overruled me. Bob's wife said something. No, he didn't want the desk marred up by straps. I said something again. Bob got upset and yelled, "Forget the straps. Let's go. Just drive like I said." I said forget it. I did exactly what he said, despite it being my truck. After all, Bob had done a lot of free work on my pickup for me. I was doing him a favor, so whatever, let him be stubborn. We left the yard sale at 10 miles per hour with a dozen or so people staring at us, slack-jawed. Bob and his wife were in the Corvette behind me, so I was doing exactly what he said, driving really slow with my hazard lights blinking. We made it the few blocks to the main drag that will take us most of the way to Bob's house. I get in the turn lane to wait. The desk starts to shift. The turn lane turns green, and I edge out almost 5 to 7 miles per hour. The top heavy desk tilted, started to shift when the wheels on one side came up. Nothing you do at that point is going to work to stop it from tilting. Physics wins again.
Bob's wife's new desk was destroyed in the middle of Powers Boulevard in Colorado Springs one warm spring day in 1993. I could hear her wailing through the open window. R.I.P. desk. Sorry, Bob's wife. I wanted you to have that thing. You were so happy. Edit. For those asking, the whole thing was anticlimactic, to be honest. We gathered the desk up and Bob attempted to repair it. It was broken into a lot of pieces though. My understanding is it worked for a bit, but when they moved out of state, they threw it out rather than trying to move it. My neighbor who took me to court because of noise my cat made. This happened about 4 years ago now, and still is one of the more ridiculous things to happen to me. I was living in San Diego, California at the time in a small apartment building with 7 or 8 units. I lived on the second floor. Our building was right near the highway overpass on the outskirts of downtown. We were also very close to the airport flight path, which made our neighborhood pretty loud. At this point, I had already lived in my apartment for just over 3 years. I decided to get a cat, got their permission from my landlord, and paid a pet deposit. When I got her through a shelter, she was probably about 3 months old. One night I was watching TV when there was a knock at my door. I answered, and standing on my porch were 2 police officers, both with their hands on their weapons, both seemingly tense. They told me they had a noise complaint from my downstairs neighbor and that he thought I was on drugs and rolling a bowling ball around. It took me a few to understand what they were talking about, and then I laughed. Oh, haha, that's probably just my kitten running around. They were not amused. They told me if they had to come back, they would have to do something, which is a pretty wild threat after finding out the noise was from a cat. I left a message with my landlord to let them know what had happened. The next day, my downstairs neighbor came to my door to apologize to me. He said he thought I may have been doing something illegal because his Army intelligence friends told him that those noises he heard aligned with that kind of activity. That made 0 sense to me, but I came to realize this guy wasn't all there. He said he was sorry and was happy I had a cat, and that he even had a toy he would give me. Cool, problem solved, right? About 2 weeks later, I had the police at my door again. This time, they were aware of the situation, and we all chuckled about how absurd the situation was. However, since they were called, they had to come. They just told me I'm doing nothing wrong, don't worry about a thing. Right around this time, my neighbor began hitting his ceiling anytime my cat ran around. It got me anxious to the point of having my cat sleep in a separate, smaller room so she couldn't run around. This only lasted a couple nights since she would cry the whole time. I just thought, whatever, I'm doing nothing illegal. We live in a city in a loud area. It's an apartment, etc. I'm not sure of the exact timeline, but about a week later, I had police at my door again. This time, it was the San Diego County Sheriff with a court summons. This old jerk neighbor was trying to get a restraining order against me because of the noise of a now 6-month-old cat. Court date comes around, and I had printed up about 15 to 20 pictures of my cat to show the judge. I was furious. My neighbor's evidence was handed to me, which was basically a list of dates and times that he marked down when he heard noises from my apartment. It's legit insane and 5 pages long, and I still have it. The judge didn't want to hear any of it, just forced us to enter into court-appointed mediation. I'm fine with that. I just want things to improve. I received a call a few weeks later after our court date to let me know that the neighbor refused mediation and that we would have a second court date towards the end of the month. Throughout all this time, he was banging on the ceiling and scaring my cat. He started being malicious and would just whack the ceiling in the middle of the night, oftentimes waking me and causing my cat to go crazy and run around. Finally, the second court date was here, and at this point, I had already decided I would be leaving San Diego. It had nothing to do with this ongoing situation, but it was a light at the end of the tunnel for sure. We're in court, and the judge starts yelling at my neighbor for refusing mediation and wasting the state's money. I interrupted to say, just want to make sure everyone knows this is about noise my 6-month-old cat is making. I hear laughter from other people behind me in the courtroom. Neighbor pleads his case, says I'm harassing him and making too much noise. I repeat, this is about noise my 6-month-old cat is making. The judge is clearly upset that this old man is wasting the court's time and said that we must enter mediation. I tell him, I'm sorry, we shouldn't even be here. I'm moving out of state in just a few weeks. And again, this is about the noise a cat is making. Again, more chuckles from the courtroom. To this, the judge replies, oh well, if you don't end up moving, then you'll need to come back to court. I said, okay, and was ready to be done with all this BS. My neighbor tried to have pleasantries with me at that point, but I just ignored him and walked out. I wish there was some sweet revenge at the end, but really, I never spoke to him again, and my cat and I are living happily in an apartment where she can run around to her heart's desire and no one can tell her otherwise. Edit. My landlord did nothing to help me out. He just chuckled and said, "Oh yeah, he's a character." Steal my iPod? Forget your laptop. A story from 2007. Imagine being in high school, back in the latter days of George Bush, and finally buying that iPod of your dreams. After saving up your allowance and the money you made around the neighborhood doing random work and lifeguarding at the local pool. Yep, that was me. And I was that jerk 14-year-old who would always make sure that you knew I had one of the better iPods, one that could play video. It was the latest Nano if I remember right. Simpler times. But every story needs an antagonist. My sister happened to find that role many times. We are very close now, but back then it wasn't so rosy. She was a teenager as well and spent most of those years resenting me. If I had something nice, forget you for having that. I was quite protective of my precious iPod. She raised quite the storm when my parents refused to buy her one. "Your brother saved his money. We didn't pay for it. We are not stopping you from buying one too if you save your money." That was their attitude toward any luxury that us kids wanted, even up to that time when buying a first car was on the table. We each had to buy our own. It built character and taught responsibility. Well, that iPod goes missing one day at home when I knew darn well I had left it charging at the family computer. I left it unattended. My parents confirmed they did not touch it and all eyes were on my sister. I'll jump ahead here. As it turned out, she had indeed taken it and had one of her friends temporarily store it until the heat was off of her. She knew my parents would search her. After this unraveled, one of my buddies saw her with the iPod at school several days later. It was time for payback. Back then, I liked to think of myself as a bona fide hacker. That's right, I knew all about batch files and how to open command prompt. Don't cross me. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Yeah, anyway, we don't talk about those dark days, but I actually did know enough to copy and paste some destructive commands into scripts using del and regdelete commands and the like. In the days of Windows XP, this would essentially require reinstalling the OS. I also was aware of a program called bat2exe, which could package your batch files and associated files it would call from the same directory into a normal exe file. And you could pick an icon to slap on that exe if you had the ICO file on hand. It doesn't take a genius, because as much as I thought I was one, I wasn't, to devise a plan here. I put a script together with the worst crap I could muster and gave it the Internet Explorer icon. This went onto my sister's computer, which was an old Pentium M laptop, which barely had enough power to load MySpace at the time. My hacker abilities allowed me to log into the administrator account by booting into safe mode or something, and simply replacing the iexplore.exe main file with my science experiment. I believe I had it to where it actually opened the real Internet Explorer in parallel, so I could deny this more easily. Fast forward to that magical moment. She's home from color guard practice and is ready for an evening full of crappy webcam photos that use every mid-2000s effect ever created. But before she can upload them, disaster. The screen resolution messes up, and the color profile is 16 colors for some reason. Random pop-up messages every few seconds. Microsoft Windows has detected a giant problem. Please consider a system upgrade, and stuff like that. Your hard drive is jammed with peanut butter. Restart required. The whole script plays out, and she's left with a paperweight until someone can get around to sorting it. Unfortunately, the computer guy and the family took quite a while to get around to it. My dad knew darn well that I had something to do with this, even if he didn't understand it fully. He made my sister apologize to me before I helped her with her laptop and made her buy me a new case for it, after she threw away the one I had to try and make it less identifiable. Hope 2021 is off to a decent start for you. Feeling supersonic. Edit. To people asking what happened to the iPod, I got it back after learning from my buddy that she was going to have it on her. She was in a world of crap from my very traditional discipline that kid parents, in addition to her laptop being a boat anchor for a few weeks. Did you remember iPods, or do you have no clue what they were? Please let us know. I'm still trying to piece this all together. Was it like the first version of an iPhone or something? Sorry, lady. I work here to fix your crap, but I'm not an employee. Hi, Reddit. I sorted old papers when I found some reminders of this story. A little explanation. I am a security expert. My main profile is facility security and fire prevention. On demand, I give information about work safety and environmental hazards. Enterprises hire me to find the risks they face. It means that at first contact, I have a first glance of my future client's site. We have a talk about what they need. Then I tell how many on-site days will that cost them. The task includes interviews, examination of regulations, and of course, assessment of the complex. It's not a job that can be done 100% in a suit and a tie. There are dirty places where I have to climb, and although I use a drone for high places, sometimes I have to climb industrial ladders, etc. For such occasions, I use military khaki coveralls with caterpillar boots, work helmets, and safety ropes if necessary. Will be important later. After the on-site days, I will prepare my report in the form requested. Mostly this means electronic and/or printed documents, but it's not uncommon for management to ask for a presentation in addition to the documents where questions can be asked. This is especially true when the company that commissioned me already had problems. This is also important later. On to this story. So I was hired by the owner of a company of rising activity, big enough site, industrial buildings, heavy machinery, spectacular office building. The owner is a smart guy, a pleasant conversationalist, but the kind with whom you count your fingers after a handshake. We agreed on what he wanted to investigate, how many days it was for him, and what I needed to access, all for how much. The guy knew he wasn't throwing away the money he was paying me. Annoying thefts took place, and he did other things, but I refrained from talking about them because that would have oriented my research. At companies this size, in many cases, the security and the fire prevention is regarded as a kind of inner service provided by the facility management department. This was the case at this company too. When I begin a job like this, I always begin with the interviews of the security personnel. It's a good source of intel, and they will know me from day one, so no confusion on the following days. I went on with them, checked the camera system, burglar alarm, access control, fire alarm, etc. By the time I get to corporate policies, I have already found serious shortcomings, but the dirty part only followed. It was scheduled for the beginning of the second day to interview the head of the FMD, but when I showed up at her office at the allotted time, I only found her very embarrassed assistant there. The young lady said she had to leave and was only expected in the afternoon, but she was willing to help. I didn't tell her. It took me enough effort to overcome her initial embarrassment, but the conditions I could examine with her help were hair-raising. Third day was the day when I put my workwear, helmet, camera, tablet, and measuring instruments. The places I had to reach had access from the inside parking lot. Some of the parkings were marked for top management, who had company cars. The top management, 4 people, parked large but not ostentatious cars in the dedicated parking lots, alongside a few more modest company cars for lower-ranking managers. I was ready to climb a 20-meter, 65 feet high industrial ladder, which takes 2 hands, so I turned the camera on. I needed a few seconds to take my gloves when I heard it. "Hey, you!" I look in the direction of the voice. It was a woman, very manager-like, very bossy in the arrogance shown from her. She was some 5'6" approximately, fit and plastic with a modeled, expensive hairstyle. Apart from her, I was the only one in the parking lot, so it could not be a mistake to whom the kind words were addressed. Before I could speak, she continued in a commanding voice. "Grab my box and put it in my car. Come on, move." Usually I am a polite, not to say chivalrous guy, but only with humans. She did not act like one by my standards, so I told her, "No, I'm busy. Do it yourself." And I began to climb the ladder. After a moment of dead silence, I heard her shout, "How dare you? Who is your boss? I will get you fired." I did not care about the ranting, but I was already more than 7 feet high on the ladder when I felt her grab my ankle. "Come back down at once. I am speaking to you," she shouted. "Listen," I told her, "I don't know you, but I presume you think that I am an employee here. I am not. Those people working in the industrial buildings, they wear blue, janitors wear red, guards wear black. Probably they endure when you speak to them in such a tone. I do not. I'm climbing this ladder now. If you let go of my ankle, I will climb alone. If you don't let go, you will come with me." She was so surprised that she let go of my ankle. I climbed the ladder, but I still heard her huff and puff. She found someone else to load her car, then she went away. I noted the number of her parking. Sometime later, I edited my report. The owner scheduled a meeting with top management and Mrs. Name, who, as head of FMD, was responsible for the activities I had to investigate. At the time of the meeting, I arrived some 5 minutes early, but the 4 big bosses were already there. We were just waiting for Mrs. Name while we talked about nothing. In a few words, it was obvious that all four had read my report and had questions. Did it escape my attention that as a kind of in-house joke, bets were made on how late Mrs. Name would be? She arrived 10 minutes late. The owner won that bet. When the owner presented me, first she turned red, then white. She was the rude lady of the parking lot. When I began my presentation, she was aggressive and arrogant, but I left no place of doubt. So when I finished, she was completely devastated. In short, the company risked a fine of approximately $60,000 due to a series of irregularities, and thefts and material damage were caused by poorly written policies and faulty contracts. This could all have been written at Mrs. Name's expense, but the management felt they could have paid more attention. As always, my report included detailed suggestions for solutions, so Mrs. Name left not with the promise of dismissal, but with as much to do as she had never expected before. Even there and then, they asked me for a check back 3 months later. The check back was only one day, but I was with Mrs. Name for almost 7 hours that day, who was looking at my eyes no more than 5 times in total from that time. Have you ever had a manager be very disrespectful to you? If so, what did they do? Please let us know. Every time they refuse to give me a refund. Oh, how I can't stand them. Cold hard cash? Sure thing. Prefacing this with the information that 1. My grandma has too much money. 2. My grandma has too much time. 3. My grandma has too big of a freezer. And 4. My grandma is petty as heck. The story. I have a cousin who's always wanted all sorts of interesting things for his birthday. Grandma loved that. Absolutely adored it. She gave him a turtle ocarina once, and I love it. That should explain her gifting for you. Now, as he grew up, he was less and less inclined to entertain Grandma's whimsical ideas and started requesting more mainstream presents. Grandma hated that and still found ways to make them whimsical. You want a guitar? Okay, but it'll have hippie wood-burning patterns on it. You want bed sheets? Sure thing, but they'll have tie-dye prints all over and be made of silk. If it was possible to make a gift whimsical, Grandma would do it. We all knew this and started getting awfully specific in what we requested until one year he threw his hands up and said, I don't know, just give me cold hard cash. Bad move. Very bad move. Grandma has chest freezers, the kind that are 4 feet deep, 4 feet across, and 12 feet long. Grandma also lives in a little foresty cottage plot, which means Grandma has access to all sorts of gardening tools and tinkers. So Grandma, being Grandma, found a big bucket, a ton of little plastic seed bags, and got to work. Cousin, of course, was very excited to finally get a normal gift and was grinning at Grandma, thinking that he finally won the game. That is, until Grandma brought out a 2x2x2 squared ice cube full of cash. Edited to add, measurements might be off. She used some sort of gardening bucket, and I was very angry when it happened. This story has been retold by Grandma so many times that I don't think she remembers the exact measurements either. It wasn't frozen together either. Oh no. Grandma had gotten creative and layered the ice gradually, freezing the cash solidly through the cube. This thing was icy white and oozing when brought into the room, and Grandma proudly announced that since he wanted cold hard cash, she gave him exactly that. This mad woman froze the equivalent of $1,000 in the ice in mixed money, which were tiny coins and bigger coins and bills in little seed bags near the center. It took the block about a week to melt because my cousin's birthday is in January, and his mother refused to let it melt in the house for the fear of water damage, so it was set in their garage slowly melting. Edited to add, bathtubs aren't common where I'm from, and they didn't have one. Moral of the story, don't mess with Grandma and her whimsical presents. You want me to run a fundraiser I tried to tell you I wouldn't be able to? Okay, have it your way. This is kind of a 2-for-1 malicious compliance story, so it's going to be kind of long. So this happened back in September of 2006 when I was 16 years old. I was a Girl Scout, and our troop leader basically ran the troop like it was a doctoral level university course and made us, aged 12 to 16, run most of the fundraisers to teach us responsibility. Well, in September, we were going to be selling steeply discounted magazine subscriptions through the organization as a last-ditch effort to earn money for a trip to London the troop would be going on in April of 2007. I had no intention of participating in the fundraiser since I knew I wasn't going to be able to sell any magazine subscriptions, nor would I be going on the London trip. However, the leader had other ideas and put me in charge of the fundraiser. meaning I would be responsible for handing out the packets to the 3 girls who weren't at the meeting, and I would have to tally up all the sales at the end of the fundraiser. I immediately protested the decision by our militant leader and told her I won't be able to run the fundraiser, as I have academic obligations on our meeting night for the entire duration of the fundraiser. The leader sneered at me and said, "What academic obligations could you possibly have for the next 5 Friday nights?" Me: "I'm in my high school's concert band, and weather permitting, we're scheduled to play at our school's soccer and/or football games. Each of the performances count as a full test grade, and missing just one performance will dock my grade a full letter." She sneered again and told me, "An extracurricular activity like band isn't an academic obligation." Me: "But ma'am, for me, concert band is an actual class like math or science, and I get graded for it. And I'm going to be studying music in college, so..." Leader: "I don't care. You're still going to run the fundraiser." A few of the other girls offered to run the fundraiser instead, but the leader was adamant that I would be the one running the fundraiser, and she snapped, "No, she needs to step up and take some responsibility for a change, even if she's not coming to London with us." So, cue malicious compliance number 1. I reluctantly agreed to run the fundraiser, and as luck should have it, the weather was perfect and clear for those next 5 Friday nights. So instead of going to my Girl Scout meetings, I was sitting in the stands of my high school's football field, jamming with the rest of the high school band. The night I went back to my Girl Scout meetings was the night I was supposed to turn in all the paperwork for the fundraiser, as it was due the following Monday. And well, I had nothing to turn in, and my leader was furious with me. In front of everyone, and a few of the parents, she screamed, "Thanks to you, the fundraiser failed." And I reminded her, "When you put me in charge, I told you I wasn't going to be able to run it because of school obligations, and you still decided to put me in charge. So I did the responsible thing and put my academics before my extracurricular activities. This fundraiser didn't fail because of me, it failed because of you." After that, she looked like she took a bite out of a lemon, handed me her cell phone and said, "Call your mother to come pick you up. You're no longer a member of this troop. I'll change your status to Juliet," a Girl Scout who isn't a member of a troop, "when I get home tonight." Before I left, she sarcastically sneered, "Good luck trying to find another troop to join." Cue malicious compliance number 2. After school the following Monday, I called the Girl Scout Council office for my region and asked if there were any cadet/senior troops in county I lived in, and it turned out there was actually one in my hometown. I requested the leader's contact information and called her as soon as I got off the phone with the council office. I explained my situation to her and if it would be alright if I joined her troop. She said of course and gave me the troop number and troop crest. So later that week, I went to the Girl Scout Council store to pick up my new troop's insignia, and that Friday night joined my new troop. But it doesn't end there. Before I left that first meeting, my new leaders asked my mother and I if I wanted to join them for a Girl Scout seminar that was going to be held the next morning at a local hotel. I agreed to go, and the leader added, "Just so you know, your last troop leader is going to be there. Is that okay? I don't know if you want to see her so soon after what happened." I grinned and said, "Oh, I definitely want to see her." The aftermath that ensued that sunny but chilly Saturday morning was glorious. Once my troop leaders, the other 2 girls from my troop, and I arrived at the venue, we were led to a room where my former troop leader, her daughter, and another girl from my former troop were in. Turns out they were also participating in the opening flag ceremony. The look on the leader's face when I entered the room wearing the full insignia of another cadet/senior troop just a week after she kicked me out of her troop was priceless. She stiflingly said a curt, "Hello," while the 2 girls were like, "We're so glad you were able to join a new troop, and none of us blame you for what happened with the fundraiser." And to top it all off, guess who ended up leading the opening flag ceremony because she was the highest ranking girl taking part? Yep, yours truly. Have you ever been in Girl Scouts, or how about Boy Scouts? And if so, did you like it? Please let us know. Please let me know when the cookies go on sale again. They're so good. My mom and stepdad stopped a class of kids from ever having hot chocolate again. So, I was making a delicious cup of hot chocolate earlier, and it reminded me of the following story. I think this belongs here, but I'm not quite sure. A few side notes before I begin for all the folks that don't live in the UK. 1. Year 6 is the final year in primary school. For Americans, I think that's like your version of middle school. I'm not sure though. 2. In my primary school, the deaf students had their own classroom for each year for extra support. They would still be included in our class projects and main subjects, English, math, and science, but they had their own classroom for other subjects, so they had more support. In my year, as there were 3 deaf kids, a couple of kids from the main class could go into the deaf class for extra support for them, and so they didn't feel isolated. 3. Green and black chocolate is very expensive. Good quality chocolate. It's around 2 pounds a bar in shops. It's very rich, depending on the percentage of cocoa in it. You can get different percentages of cocoa, and that would be how strong it is. So 85% cocoa would be stronger than 80% cocoa. Now on to the story. The entitled mom in this story is actually my mom. Entitled stepdad is my stepdad. So when I was in year 6, me and another girl were in the deaf class with the deaf kids. In our school, we were allowed to call our teachers by their first names. Not every primary school is like this. Most actually go by surnames. So the deaf kids teacher was a lovely Greek woman. We will call her Nice Teacher. Nice Teacher was a very enthusiastic teacher. Once a week, she would make us students in the smaller class hot chocolate as a treat. It was the best hot chocolate I had ever had. Well, one week, Nice Teacher asked us students to chip in with ingredients. She gave each student an item to get. I had the task of getting the chocolate. However, she specifically asked me to get the green and black chocolate at 85%. After school that day, I asked my entitled mom and entitled stepdad when we were next going shopping. They both said they weren't sure. The next day, entitled mom said shopping was getting done whilst me and my brother were at school. He's 3 years younger than me. So I asked her about the chocolate. She said no, as it was too expensive. She then asked why I needed it, so I told her. Her and my entitled stepdad exploded. They said they weren't paying for it, and we can use cheap chocolate. I explained that I was asked specifically to get that chocolate as it's what our teacher used. My entitled stepdad and entitled mom weren't having any of it. Instead of going shopping, they called a meeting with the head teacher, deputy head, and Nice Teacher. I don't know what exactly happened in the meeting, but when it was over, Nice Teacher came back into the classroom in tears. I knew what had happened. She stood in front of the very small class and told us all that due to a complaint, we weren't allowed to have hot chocolate ever again. I felt awful. I knew it was because of my entitled mom and entitled stepdad. Just as lunch was beginning, she pulled me aside and told the other kids to leave. She told me that my entitled mom and entitled stepdad complained, and she said because it really upset her, she didn't want me in her class anymore. She said she would keep Jess, but she will exchange me for another kid. I got so upset. I was only 10 years old at the time. I enjoyed being in her class. She was actually the reason I got so into Greek mythology. That is what she taught us in history. As far as I'm aware, all the time she was still at the school, she never made hot chocolate for the students ever again. Oh, don't worry. When I went into secondary school, my entitled mom and entitled stepdad were exactly the same. Whenever we had food tech, they would always moan about buying the ingredients, and if you didn't have the ingredients, you had to give a couple of pounds to the teacher to be able to use their ingredients. Well, my entitled stepdad and entitled mom refused to do that too. They had so many meetings with teachers, and it actually resulted in me being kicked out of the food tech classes. As I said, I'm not sure if this belongs here. My boyfriend said that entitled mom and entitled stepdad were being entitled a bit as they stopped the whole class from having it, but I'm honestly not sure. Edit. Wow, I honestly didn't expect this to blow up as it has. I wanted to do this just to point out a few things. 1. My mom and stepdad definitely could afford it. When my brother went into secondary school, they paid for all his food classes and even bought extra in case he needed them. I wasn't exactly liked by my mom. We have a very tainted relationship. That tainted relationship is part of the reason why I have developed BPD. 2. I have noticed everyone saying how much Nice Teacher isn't exactly nice. I understand that after what she did, but the reason I put her as Nice Teacher was because she actually really got me into Greek mythology. I'm a 22-year-old female, and even to this day, I will sit on the laptop and write up and research all different parts of Greek mythology. I even have my star sign, Sagittarius, tattooed on me. It was my first ever tattoo too, and I know the story behind it. Anything mythology-wise comes up, I can talk for hours. My boyfriend finds it adorable. I honestly don't know why. Edit 2. Another example of the favoritism. My mom and stepdad refused to pay for my passport and refused to pay any money towards school trips abroad. They also refused to pay for any of my hobbies. My granddad paid and took me to them, as he believed a kid should have hobbies. However, when my brother signed up for Navy cadets, but quit because we found out he only went for the trips abroad and didn't want to join the Navy, my mom and stepdad paid for everything for him. his passport, his uniform, deposits for any trips abroad, and even gave him well over £300 spending money. To those who have said about more than I'm letting on, I honestly don't know what happened in the meeting, but when school was over, my mom and stepdad picked us up, a huge grin across their face, and smugly my mom was like, "So, how was school? Make any hot chocolate today?" So I can only assume they went overboard. Who do you think is worse, the parents or the teacher? Please let us know. The parents are jerks, but the teacher, I really wasn't expecting that. Am I the jerk for throwing away all my sister-in-law's wedding invitations? So I, 18, female, run a small business where I do calligraphy. I make red bubble stickers and do wedding invitations. It's not a large source of income for me, but it is nice to have a few more dollars coming in. I do hope to expand it one day because I put a lot of work into my designs and spend a lot of money on supplies. My brother, 25, male, got married to his girlfriend, 26, female, before the world went to heck. But there is an incident that she is still angry with me for and refuses to speak to me. For her wedding, she asked me if I would do the invitations. I was fine with doing them as a wedding gift until I realized that she was having a 200-plus person wedding and wanted handwritten menus, invitations, and name cards as well as table cards with facts about her and her fiancé. Of course, she picked the most expensive stationery and most elaborate designs that she could. I told her straightforward that I would not be able to finance this, me being a broke 17-year-old saving up for college, and that I could do it if I were paid, in which I would just give her a regular wedding gift. I told her that I would heavily discount the price to where she would only be paying for supplies. She told me that we would work out the details, to which I assumed she meant the price/budget for supplies. Now, I finished all the invitations. Took me a significant chunk of time, but they are ready to go. I asked my sister-in-law to reimburse me for the costs, and she flips out and refuses to pay me, saying that I'm taking advantage of her and that I should be nice to her since the rest of the wedding was extremely expensive and that I was doing this to purposely exclude her from her new family. Here's where I might be the jerk. At this point, I had spent a lot of money and time on them, and I realized that there was no way she was going to pay for the menus/table cards. So I threw away all the invitations I had made. It hurt to see my work go down the drain, but I did use the designs I created for them as examples on my Etsy site. By this time, it was too late to hire someone to make new invitations, so sister-in-law basically had to send emails instead of invitations. She managed to get printed menus for cheap though. Sister-in-law still won't speak with me. Mom is on my side, and brother is pretty neutral. He just wants me to apologize to keep the peace. Am I the jerk? Edit. So some have asked why I couldn't just give that to her as a gift instead of buying a separate one when I realized that I wouldn't be paid. The reason is that the stationery plus new pens cost way more than I would usually shell out for a wedding gift. I was going to buy her a good coffee machine, about $80, as that was the only thing I could really afford on my budget. The stationery and supplies would have cost hundreds of dollars on my end if I had gone through with making all the things without reimbursement. This would have wiped out virtually all my profits for the year. But luckily, I only ended up doing the invitations, so I wasted a lot less money than I would have if I had gone through with the project. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for throwing them all away or not? Please let us know. Not at all. Tell your brother he's in for a wild ride with that Karen he just married. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.